Good morning, everyone. We will convene from our recess in about 1 minute. 1 minute. So coffee, snacks. Yeah, and for those of you who are here, there are Higher YO t-shirts, so go grab some swag for sure.
So, ET, are you going to wear the swag?
Yes.
Well, then obviously all of the cool kids will have them on.
All right, it is 8:30, so I'm going to go ahead and ask everyone to jump back in for day 2 of our Q2 quarterly council meeting. Yeah, so how many folks we got? We got online, in person. Great. Cool. If you didn't hear me before, the Higher YO t-shirts are available for you in the back, so go grab that. And we've got plenty of snacks and water and all the good things. So yeah, well, welcome back. I think yesterday was a great day filled with a lot of really great updates. We visited Webster Mycology, which was really awesome. So just kind of before we kind of kick it off, I mean, any kind of like quick takeaways from the conversations last night, whether it be at dinner or visiting Webster Mycology that we'd like to share? Takeaways. What stood out from yesterday? Yes, Representative Berger.
Thank you. I really appreciated everybody, but the enthusiasm of our young entrepreneurs, and that enthusiasm is contagious, and we need more of that. And it just keeps growing. So I really appreciate the enthusiasm of a young man wanting to build a business right here in Wyoming, graduated from Evanston. It's just amazing to see. Love it.
Yeah, I would totally agree. That's probably one of my favorite things about these visits, being in person. And for those of you who are joining us remotely, it was just great to see a son, and a dad come up with this idea and actually put it into practice. And that's kind of really what the purpose of this council is. Like, how do we make that? How do we support them? How do we help them? So I love hearing those stories. Like, how do we tell more of these really wonderful Wyoming stories? And even yesterday with the collaboration of OnlyCo and the premiere of the docu-series around Ryan Brothers, like really cool stuff happening. So, it's kind of our responsibility to tell those stories and help them get to where they need to go. So I really enjoyed yesterday. So yesterday was great. And today we've got some really awesome discussions. We've got the Harvard Growth Lab coming up. We're going to hear about Western Wyoming Community College updates, all different kinds of stuff. So, and then we're going to talk about like our state planning and spending plan expenditures. So to kind of kick us off, Jennifer, do you mind taking roll call, please?
Governor Mark Gordon or designee.
Sarah Dorenzo here.
Senator Fred Baldwin. Representative Ryan Berger.
Here.
Jim Engel. Ron Wild.
Present.
Tony Cross. Dick Smith. Acting Chair Eric Trowbridge.
Present.
Larry Fodor.
Present.
Michael Kircher.
Present.
Bria Hammock.
Present.
Chair Fabian Librera. Tina Conley. Nathan Williams.
Present.
Philip Cornella.
Present.
Brenda Morgan.
Present.
Danny Bureau. Charles Wilson.
Present on Zoom.
Tammy Johnson. Director Elizabeth Gagan.
Present.
Nikki Harper.
Present.
Mayor Matt Hall.
Here.
Katie Hogarty,
Present.
Travis Lawrence, Travis Lawrence. I'm going to note you here because I can see you. Dr. Ben Moritz or designee,
Here.
Superintendent Degenfelder or designee,
Dr. Michelle Aldridge, present.
Corinne Schmidt or designee,
Christy Gordy's here.
Josh Durrell or designee.
Ron Goldberg, present.
Mr. Chairman, you have a quorum.
All right, thank you, Jennifer. And to get us started this morning, we have is it Lucas. Am I pronouncing that correctly? From the Harvard Growth Lab. So yeah, Lucas, go ahead and take us away.
Awesome. Thanks so much. Can I share my screen? Does that work? Oh, okay. You're sharing the screen, and then I'll have to ask you to flip to the next slide every time. That works too. Okay, perfect. Great. Well, thanks everyone, and thanks for giving me the opportunity to speak and to present a couple of our first takeaways from an analysis that we've been doing within the context of the Pathways to Prosperity project, which I hope many of you are familiar by now, a project that we've been doing with the state of Wyoming and working with a lot of different agencies. So I'm sure you've come across our work, and so I'm presenting a couple of early results from the labor market analysis that we've been doing. So on the next slide, I want to show you a couple things that I want to walk through today and show you a couple early results, which is on one side, I want to describe the workforce challenge. So describe and show you the bad equilibrium that I think we see right now in Wyoming, both in the short and the long term, because these are two very different dynamics. Secondly, I want to unpack the workforce challenge, so understand what are the potential causes which are driving this problem to some extent. And then I want to discuss what are ways to alleviate the challenge, so explore potential solutions. So on the next slide, in terms of describing the workforce challenge, as you can see on the next slide, we are going to look first at the short-term situation. So next slide, please. And in the short term, we're seeing that Wyoming is currently experiencing a very tight labor market with excess demand. So what we see here is in the blue curve, we see the demand for labor in Wyoming, which is employment and job openings. And in orange, we see the supply, the labor force. And what's really notable is that over the last 3 years or so, we've seen the demand for labor increase a lot. So we have much more employment and many job openings being posted by companies, but the supply not being able to catch up. So we're really in a situation of excess demand right now. A lot of companies are struggling to hire workers. As we can also see kind of on the next slide, something that's captured by the metric of job openings to unemployed people. So for every one unemployed person in the state of Wyoming, we currently have more than 2 job openings. So that's the blue line is Wyoming, and what you can see that we're really in a moment right now, which is kind of the highest that this metric has been over the last 20 years.
And Lucas, just really quick, can everyone online hear Lucas in this presentation? We need to get closer to the microphone.
Should I get closer to the microphone?
Yeah, that's better. Yes. Thank you, Lucas. Sorry about that.
Sorry. Okay. Thanks for letting me know. And also feel free to stop me at any time. I hope I'm trying to budget in some time for Q&A at the end. But if there are any questions for specific graphs, we can also stop on the way. But what I want to point out here as well is that kind of the grayed out lines that you see in the back are other US states. And you see that kind of the trajectory that we're seeing in Wyoming is not unique in the sense that there's many other states that are experiencing a similar dynamic, meaning that really this tightness of the labor market is kind of a national phenomenon right now. Nonetheless, we can see on the next slide, a lot of companies are indeed struggling to hire workers in Wyoming, and workforce availability thus is a significant problem. So we've run a survey of a number of companies in Wyoming in July of last year, together with the Department of Workforce Services. And we can see here that the vast majority of firms in Wyoming that participated in this survey identified workforce availability being a serious constraint or somewhat or large or one of their largest constraints. So this is kind of the short-term dynamic where Wyoming is facing a very tight labor market. But what I want to show you in the next couple of slides is kind of the long-term dynamic is very different. So if we go to the next slide, the long-term, next slide, please, is that in the long term, we've not seen job growth over the 10-year period of 2012 to 2022. Here, I'm actually extending it a little bit longer. We've seen that employment growth in Wyoming has been very limited. So in this metric, Wyoming actually performed second worst of all US states, where we see Utah and Idaho really taking off across this period. And it's not just employment, but on the next slide, you'll see that it's also been wage growth, which has been very limited in Wyoming. So this is a comparison of real wage growth over this period, 2012 to 2022, where you see the red bar at the bottom. Wyoming compares or comparison to national median wage growth. And we see that the wage growth in Wyoming has been significantly below the national median, and the light blue bars are actually kind of the regional peers, which saw much higher wage growth. So on the next slide, I just want to take a step back and make the point that really in the short term, we're seeing a very tight labor market in Wyoming, employers struggling to find workers and struggling to fill their positions. But this is, again, not a situation that's unique to Wyoming. But the national labor market being tight overall is partially what's causing this. And in the long term, the dynamic has been very different. So the long term, the growth trajectory of Wyoming has really lagged behind the rest of the country, both in terms of low job growth and low wage growth. So moving on to the next slide, I want to take a step further and discuss potential causes. Next slide, please. The first one I want to discuss are wages and relative output. So more looking at the demand side here. And here again, we see related to what I showed you before in terms of wage growth over the 10-year period, 2012 to 2022, real wage growth has been significantly below the national trajectory in Wyoming. And if we go to the next slide, we see that the dynamics differ quite a bit depending on occupational groups. So what we're looking at here is the median wage in 2012 on the x-axis, and on the y-axis, the growth of that median wage over the 10-year period, and always comparing these occupational groups between Wyoming and the rest of the US. So what we see in the top right-hand quadrant, that's actually kind of the good side. This is kind of where you'd want to be, meaning these are occupations that are both higher in terms of wage than nationally and also growing larger. So this is really a sign for a lot of demand. And the only occupational group for which we have that signal in Wyoming are healthcare practitioners. Most of the occupational groups are actually kind of below on the bottom quadrants, meaning that their growth is significantly below that of those occupations in the national picture. And I think what I take away here, a worrying sign is, especially in the bottom left-hand quadrant, you see that the occupations which are already below the median wage for their occupation nationally, but also growing less than they do nationally, are more knowledge-intensive occupations. So business and financial operations, computer and mathematics, legal. So kind of this is really a sign for a lack of demand for some of these occupations. So moving to the next slide, this also kind of goes in hand with what I was just showing. So on the x-axis, we're seeing the relative presence in Wyoming. So you can think of that if you're higher than 1, this occupation is more present in Wyoming than what we would expect, given the size of the state. And if you're below 1, you are smaller than what we would expect. So kind of intuitively, what we would expect and what we do see is that construction and extraction, installation, maintenance, some of the mining-related occupations as well are kind of in high demand or highly represented in Wyoming, and also have had a higher wage growth in Wyoming than what they did nationally. But again, looking at the bottom left-hand quadrant, we see a lot of the more knowledge-intensive occupations being less represented in Wyoming than what we would expect, and also seeing lower growth. I think the most prominent here is all the way to the bottom left is computer and mathematics again. So moving to the next slide, something to also show this is that this partially has to do with the fact that the output per worker in some of these industries is lower in Wyoming than it is nationally. So what we have here, the dots in this case are industries, and what we're looking at on the x-axis is the output per worker in terms of dollars per employee, comparing the industry in Wyoming to the US. So again, if you're above 1, that means this industry is producing more in Wyoming per employee than it is nationally. And on the y-axis, we're comparing the wage. So these are to some extent related. So if you're producing more, you're also able to pay employees a higher wage. And again, what we see here, the top right-hand quadrant, that's kind of the good quadrant. This is where you want to be. These are mostly mining-related industries, and a lot of the employment, so 82.8% of all employment in Wyoming is concentrated right now is in industries that are producing less than the national industry, so to say. So this is kind of a worrying sign of really the demand side being an issue here, and the ability to produce more. So if we go to the next slide, another question then we can ask ourselves is looking at the supply side, so looking at human capital and education, and to what extent that may be an issue as well. So on the next slide, we'll see that actually the challenge doesn't necessarily appear to be one, the long-term workforce challenge and growth challenge, in our opinion, doesn't appear to be one that can be solved necessarily with more education, in the sense that we see that Wyoming has the second lowest proportion of jobs that require tertiary education in the US overall. And on the graph on the right-hand side, I'm showing you that the population with a bachelor degree actually increased in the period of 2010 to 2020, while at the same time, real GDP per capita in Wyoming decreased. Whereas you can see that dynamic has been very different for the US overall. Moving on to the next slide, you'll see also that we can look at the returns to tertiary education. So kind of how much more, what's the premium that you get when you receive or when you get a tertiary education in Wyoming. And we see that returns to tertiary education in Wyoming are actually the lowest across all regional peers. So if a tertiary degree leads to, on average, roughly 25% higher salary than if you have a high school degree, which again, put in context with the fact that there's a lot of jobs in Wyoming that don't require a tertiary degree, this goes on tandem. Going on to the next slide. This, in fact, then also leads to a situation in which many educated Wyomingites are more likely to leave the state. Right? Unsurprisingly, if there are many jobs that don't necessarily require tertiary education, and you get tertiary educated, then you might look for jobs that maybe aren't in Wyoming but are elsewhere. So you're more likely to leave the state. Moving on to the next slide. We also want to understand some of the demographic challenge that's partially playing into this. So next slide, please. Similar to what I just showed you, putting this in context with other US states, we can see that the ratio at which highly educated people and young people especially leave Wyoming is amongst the highest in the US overall, only behind Alaska. So going on to the next slide, we can see that for every tertiary educated Wyomingite who stayed, nearly 3 have left. And this is only more exacerbated in Alaska. So next slide, please. At the same time, Wyoming is also able to attract a lot of tertiary educated people, which is a good sign. But there's a big difference in kind of the occupations that what we call here in-migrants and out-migrants do. So an in-migrant is someone that's moving to Wyoming and has a tertiary education, and an out-migrant is someone that left Wyoming. Excuse me. And the biggest difference we see here are in business and financial operations and computer and mathematical occupations. So on the next slide, we'll see that this isn't just a problem for tertiary educated people, because of course we care about the overall population, but really in terms of the overall population in Wyoming, we see a lot of young Wyomingites leaving the state. So what we're looking at here is the share of the population that was born in the state that at this age lives outside of the state. So we see at when you get to the mid-30s, about more than 60% of all Wyomingites or people that were born in Wyoming live elsewhere. And again, this is amongst the highest in the US overall. And on the next slide, we'll see that this exacerbates a problem with already declining fertility rates, where the population of the state is increasingly aging, so putting more pressure on on the workforce availability problem. So we'll see on the next slide that the population overall in Wyoming from the early 2000s has increased, but the labor force hasn't really increased as much. So we're looking here at the gap between the two and really see a situation in which the pressure kind of is increasing. And on the next slide, I think one phenomenon that's sometimes being discussed, especially at the national level, and we've seen it work out in other states, is that international migration in some areas can help alleviate that pressure, in the sense that it provides both workers to the workforce and sometimes also helps alleviate this demographic challenge. But that's something that is to date relatively underutilized in Wyoming, but also within the region, as you can see on this graph. So moving on to the next slide, the takeaways here from my perspective are that currently the current economic structure doesn't really demand many types of high paying and good jobs. And of course, this is at a macro, at the state perspective. So of course, there are many exceptions to this, but we've seen that the wages and the output per worker are relatively lower in many underrepresented industries. And we've seen, with the exception of healthcare, for example, the demand for many more knowledge intensive occupations being relatively low. So the demand side really is the worrying signal here. Whereas when we look at the supply side, so education, which has been something which has worked out very well in Wyoming, and we know that the quality of education is very high in Wyoming, but we don't think that that's necessarily something that will address the underlying challenge. But it's rather the lack of good jobs that is driving away highly educated individuals. And within the context of this demographic challenge, this will kind of result in a situation in which employers will have more and more problems finding workers, but will have to think more about the demand side of how we can, in the long term, increase the demand for high-paying jobs that helps retain people, especially young people in Wyoming. So on the next slide, I want to briefly discuss some ways we've been thinking about how to address this and alleviate the challenge. So next slide, please. And in the long term, it's really thinking about how we can develop a more complex economy that offers high-paying jobs. And a big part of this, in our perspective, is thinking about larger agglomerations. And so lifting constraints that currently exist for cities to agglomerate further, such as housing constraints that we know have received a lot of attention, and there's a lot of improvements happening right now because overall the larger agglomerations allow to develop more complex industries that can take advantage of this very high supply and of existing human capital and of the great education that exists in Wyoming and the people that eventually want to stay but can't find necessarily the jobs that they're looking for right now. So what we just one illustrative graph on the next slide that underlines this a little bit is looking at industries, and here we're looking at a couple more knowledge-intensive industries and how they scale with size. So on the x-axis, we're looking at total non-farm private employment between 30,000 and 100,000. So both Casper and Cheyenne are roughly at about 30,000. And on the y-axis, we're looking at the employment share, so how big these industries normally are in these cities. And we see that there's a very strong relationship that these industries start only being bigger and more important when the cities are larger, right? So we need agglomeration in order to develop some of these industries and more knowledge-intensive industries. So that's kind of the long-term perspective. Moving on the next slide, I also want to lay out briefly a couple of things that we're thinking about the short term, because we are in a situation where a lot of employers are currently struggling to find workers, and that shouldn't be neglected. And so there are a couple of pools of worker pools that we think could be or have potential to contribute more in the sense that they're currently constrained and can't participate in the workforce as much. These are along the lines of childcare constrained individuals, justice involved, so people that are exiting the prison system, the higher education system, in the sense that we see a lot of potential in graduates that are currently leaving the state, and some of them would want to stay actually in Wyoming. And then also thinking about kind of the out-of-state labor pool, so attracting people from out of state. These are all kind of groups that we've worked on and topics that we've worked on, smaller groups with participation of agencies across the state. Two other ideas that I just want to put on the table that we haven't worked on as much, but think might have potential in the future, is thinking about proactive job transitions out of industries that are under stress. So thinking proactively about industries that and companies that might want to shed labor, and how we can kind of retain those people in the state. And then lastly, the point of international migration. So on the last slide, I just have a kind of brief overview. We don't need to get into that, but just to illustrate here kind of these different labor pools that we've been working on, and we have analyses on and thoughts about how they can their participation in the workforce can be improved. So yeah, I think going on to the next slide. These are kind of the two approaches, thinking on the long term more about developing the conditions for a more complex economy and attracting knowledge-intensive industries, where really agglomeration is part of that, with the end goal of retaining more people in the state. And in the short term, thinking about ways that one can support companies that are currently under stress and struggling to find workers by addressing kind of some of the potential that is in a number of these worker pools. So going on to the next slide, I think that's all I wanted to share with you. And I appreciate that I've probably flown by and went over a lot of graphs very quickly, but we'll also have a written up analysis of this that we're still working on, but I'm happy to share that once it's out. And I hope we still have some time for questions.
Great. Thank you, Lucas. Very compelling data, right? So council discussion, we've got about 10 minutes with Lucas here. I think one thing that kind of personally stood out to me, 46% retention rate at UW. Lots of stuff there. We've got work to do.
I think,
I know,
sorry. Go on.
oh, sorry.
No,
I
please.
know, there was some legislation that we were working on, during the budget session about, looking at possible, the State Lands and Investment Board, providing, low interest loans for first time home buyers in our state. And that didn't go through, but the idea is there. Not saying it can't, it just needs to be reworked, but that's something to really think about. You know, keeping those interest loans for those first time home buyers, and keeping those, you know, those kids attracted to Wyoming. Cause I will say firsthand, from my experience, that's a huge barrier for my children right now. I can tell you, and they have really good jobs, you know, very good professional jobs. One's a teacher and one works in construction management. Both graduates of the University of Wyoming, and housing is an issue. The next issue, and what I'm looking at right now too, is childcare. Childcare is very expensive. Now I'm seeing some things going on in Rock Springs. I know their school district, and I know WWCC has partnered with the school district for childcare, and they're providing childcare for their employees. You know, my niece has decided to go back to work. She's in HR, and she's going to be working for WWCC because of those childcare opportunities. Now that's happening in Rock Springs. Smart thing to do. That's how you're going to attract workers. What about the rural communities? How are we going to do that? I know that we worked on legislation on the educational savings accounts, but we added preschool. Now, preschool is school. It's not childcare. It's preschool for 4-year-olds that people can apply for a grant for educational savings accounts there. Let's see what that does, because I think preschool education is very important for kids. Let's see if the numbers come out and how the numbers come out, and especially for learning, you know, that early preschool child, and helping parents out. The big thing, I know that a lot of families in Wyoming, and to make it work in Wyoming, both the mom and the dad have to work so that they can afford housing. And it's been pretty hard. It's a challenge. So I hope you guys are seeing that. I think you are. Those are some solutions that we're going to try to continue. That's something I'm going to try to continue if I continue in the legislature. Those are huge, and I think they can help. I hope. Anyways, that's where I'm at.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman?
Yep.
This is Charlie Wilson. If I may, Lucas, that's awesome. Really interesting. You talked about agglomeration, I think was the word you used. Talk about the city size. Could you talk a little bit more about that? I think I was interpreting it to say there's sort of a certain mass or certain population size of a city that would then result in the growth of industry. Am I getting that correctly?
Yeah, Charlie, that's perfect. You're getting that exactly right. So what I was trying to say and trying to show that there are certain industries, especially industries where right now I think we see a lot of people leaving Wyoming when we talk about kind of this retention rate, right? And low retention rate from UW. That's a lot of graduates that are leaving the state to find opportunities in other states, actually mostly larger cities, because they offer opportunities and they have industries which have demand for kind of this kind of jobs and skills that these graduates have. So part of that puzzle then is to think about, okay, can we think about how to create larger agglomerations as well in Wyoming? That doesn't need to be huge cities, and we're not talking necessarily here about kind of the front range urban sprawl, but we're thinking about you know, still having a couple of places that definitely have kind of the room for growth, and that could then sustain and have room for some of these more knowledge intensive industries, because we find that these knowledge-intensive industries require larger agglomerations, so require larger cities. They typically don't develop in smaller places.
Yes, thank you. And that's fascinating because it occurs to me, one of the things that's different about Wyoming is that our cities are relatively quite small. Are there political things or policies that come to mind that would promote that sort of growth?
Yes, so I think one thing we've seen is that there are some of those we see that in Cheyenne, in Laramie, in Casper, there's actually a lot of demand. People that want to stay there, live there, move there, but that can't find houses, at the price that they're looking for. So I think one of the big pieces is thinking about housing in this context, and both housing in terms of we've seen that there's a lot of regulations that are making housing construction more difficult and more expensive, but we've also seen that kind of RTO infrastructure sometimes is missing. So that's on one side, so allowing for these cities to grow further because they're naturally trying to grow right now, but are in some cases constrained. And then on the other side, thinking about what we call kind of strategic bets. So thinking about specific industries or companies that you might want to attract and have kind of as an anchor in an economy. I understand that, for example, with Plenty, so this vertical ag farming company in Laramie, there's something of that sort going on. But we see sometimes that kind of these strategic bets in specific industries or companies can also help out in attracting a kind of a industry like that.
I see. Great. Thank you.
Any other council discussion? We've got about 4 minutes. Yes, Dr. Aldridge.
I was just going to say, in another aspect of my life, I have the opportunity to serve on the city council in Cheyenne, and we have been working on affordable housing pretty heavily. We were just in a meeting last week where we were told that the starter home in Cheyenne right now, the average starting price for a home is $400,000. That is not attainable housing. Affordable and attainable are two different things, especially in the current mortgage interest market. So I would just, we haven't found a solution. We know we have businesses who want to come to Cheyenne, but housing is a huge barrier, and we have Air Force individuals in the Air Force that are having to commute from northern Colorado because there's not housing available, which is problematic when they have a 30-minute response time if they were to be called for security purposes. So I think there's a lot of challenges that are going. It's another one of those perfect storms, right? You know, we need the houses to be built. We need to have them be affordable and attainable. The mortgage interest market, we don't have a lot of control over. The UDC code, we're working on, but we don't know that the changes we're making into the UDC code are actually going to benefit the consumer. So there's just a lot of unknowns. And I know that affordable housing is an interim topic with the legislature this year. And I would hope that communities would work together to connect with the legislature. In the 70s and 80s, there were low interest rate loans to first-time home owners called through WCDA. That was a really common way for a lot of people to get into their first home in the 70s and 80s. And maybe, hopefully there's some work to be done there and an opportunity there, Representative Berger, that you can pursue.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Aldridge. Mr. Lawrence, I think you had your hand raised online.
Yeah. So Lucas, I'm curious, you identify, housing as a constraint in Wyoming, which, just about every community in Wyoming knows that. But has the Harvard Growth Lab, have you come up with any kind of roadmap or structure for implementation for low-income housing, for workforce housing?
Yes, yes, we have. So we have, so kind of what I presented here is part of our analysis kind of from our workforce work and workforce work stream. We have a kind of dedicated work stream focused on housing, where we're actually working with both at the state level, but also with a couple municipalities and cities. And so I think most of that, or a lot of kind of good things have been going on in Cheyenne recently, where I think the emphasis I want to put on and what we've mostly been focused on is how to increase the supply of housing, right? Because if you think about making it easier to build more houses, the prices for houses overall will go down. So the things that we've been focusing on are on one side kind of regulatory issues where we had, I think, a couple of things or promising signals and things that were passed just recently. And then secondly, I think thinking about more the arterial infrastructure part of it. So we have a couple of people from our team that are specifically focused on that. And I think where we've seen already kind of the discussions that we've had with cities across the state and also at the state level, that the awareness is there and the willingness to move and change things. And I think we're already seeing some of that on the ground.
Great. Thank you very, very much. There's a lot of data here to unpack, right? So, and I do correct, we will get this slide sent to us, all the data that we just saw to the council. Yep. So I definitely, encourage over the summer to look at this data, think about it, have conversations. Yeah, to me, kind of in a way, I don't know what stands out to me. It's like so many Wyomingites want to stay, but they can't, whether they can't find that job or they can't find that housing. So how do we influence that in a way? So thank you very much, Lucas. Really, really great stuff. Yes.
Thanks for having me.
Just a final thought. If this council wants to sponsor any legislation or think about sponsoring, please come up with some ideas. We can do this together. We can't sponsor, can we? Dang it. Oh, I thought it's not councils, it's task force that do that, right? All right, I'm off. But we'll continue to work on that. I'll continue to push for these ideas. I'm just letting you know. So a lot of great discussion to help. That helps me in the process. A lot of great discussion. And I'll just say one more thing. And I don't mean, my children and my nieces and nephews, they don't want low-income housing. They want to be able to buy their own housing. That's what they want to do. That's the Wyoming dream. I want to be home. I don't want to be a low-income homeowner. I don't want a temporary housing. I don't want to be that type of owner. I want my own housing. I want to be like mom and dad, grandma and grandpa, great grandpa, all that. Does it make sense? Okay. Just a thought.
Thank you, Mr. Representative. All right. And again, thank you very much, Lucas. Really great stuff. So, all right. Moving on to our next agenda item, we have Amy Murphy, who's going to give us an update on the Western Wyoming Community College, their new program on electrical and instrumentation. So, do we have Amy?
I'm online.
Hi, Amy.
Hi.
Thanks for joining us.
No, thank you for this opportunity. And I want to thank Ron and Jennifer for actually reaching out to giving us this opportunity. So I am representing Western Wyoming Community College. Many of you may be familiar with me. I'll have you go ahead and advance to the next slide. I used to be the Dean of Outreach and Workforce Development at the college, and I'm currently serving in a role for Grant Management Workforce Initiatives, which is actually working on the funding sources that actually provided this opportunity for what I'm going to share with you here in a bit in Evanston. I wanted to take you through a little bit of things, just that Western as a whole, and it kind of ties into what Lucas just talked about, because one of the things that I'm going to share with you today is some opportunities that we actually have here in Wyoming. And these opportunities are to try and keep our talent here. One of the things Lucas brought up is like the younger generation tends to want to move out, and we hear this all the time. As my role kind of served working with the high school students, that is the number one thing the high school students told me, is they're going to get their education and they're going to move on. The interesting fact that we kind of started seeing in the trend is that they tend to come back about age 30 and they're back in Wyoming, kind of staying here. Our goal at the college was to try and show them the opportunities here, the chances that they have for career pathways and different things to that nature. So I'm going to go ahead and have you advance one more slide, please. So I started off with the mission, and I think it's important to kind of share this. different than maybe UW in regards to UW serves the entire state, and we're partners with UW as far as our transfer programs go. But a community college is just that. We're here to serve the community that we actually reside within. And as you know, Western has a 29,000 square foot mile service area that we actually represent. And we have outreach centers that are actually throughout the entire service area to try to provide those services. And as you can see here, our whole goal is to improve our students, the employees, the community, and the environment around it. And what we do is we focus on what is needed and kind of adapt to that. Next slide, please. So with that said, I wanted to share a couple things before I actually got to the Evanston thing to just kind of illustrate, again, a community college's role is to kind of adapt to what is needed in the area. And back in 2022, we started our first power line program, which was brought to us by our industry partners. And it was a need that was out there that they couldn't find skilled labor to actually do this. And through the partnership with Rocky Mountain Power and several others, Lower Valley Energy, the WREA, we actually were able to get this going. Now, this program was initiated through the Wyoming Innovation Partnership through Governor Gordon's office. And this is just one, and you're going to see when we got to the Evanston project that was actually funded through this WIP initiative. This aspect of it, the piece that I want to share with you, is these kind of programs take dollars to get them started, right? And as you look at kind of the different aspects that are out there, all that equipment, the poles, all of that was provided the funding for through the state. And we were able to do that. The other piece is when you're looking at doing training programs to find that skilled labor is the partnerships that you have with industry. Now, I will share with you, Rocky Mountain Power has gone above and beyond to help us with this program, get it started. You can see there on the right, there's a photo there of the pole that's actually erected there in the air. That actually, they came out and provided all the labor, the equipment to actually install all our poles before that class started. The other piece that's been super great with the state of Wyoming is we've had a lot of the utility companies that have provided equipment above and beyond what the grant was able to provide us. And each of these students that have gone through this, as Lucas mentioned, when you look at educational pathways, you can actually complete this with a certificate or an associate's degree. A lot of our students are opting for the certificate to start into the apprenticeship programs within the utility companies and kind of grow that way. But we have just as many that are choosing to do the associates, because if they do choose to go up into management, they get those extra skills. If you want to move to the next slide, please. This is the most recent one that we had, and many of you probably saw this last week that we did a groundbreaking. And again, this is a need that is in not only Wyoming, but it's the entire country. But again, our focus is the Wyoming and our service area, which is healthcare. And we were awarded $3 million through the EDA to actually construct and renovate construct this new health science building and renovate some additional space that's kind of connected to this. But the other piece that I want to point out is the state's commitment to this as well. The state committed half the dollars through their capital improvement funds to actually help us offset the cost of this building. So together, partnerships throughout the state to make these things happen. The service area healthcare providers came forward. We had 14 of those providers that came forward to provide the support and the need to show the jobs that they have in their respective areas and how this can actually help them grow and sustain those positions. Next slide, please. This fall, we'll actually start a substation program. And again, this was through the Wyoming Innovation Partnership. This aspect of it actually expanded from not only the utilities, but also into the manufacturing realm as well. A lot of our manufacturing facilities, especially in the Southwest Wyoming sector, came forward and said the need that they had for substation technicians. Now, the reason I point out power line and substation is it ties into the electrical and instrumentation expansion we're doing in Evanston, and I'll kind of explain that a little bit further. But this program too also will tie into the new Natrium facility that's coming in, because they will also have a substation there on site. Next slide, please. In addition to that, as we continue to kind of look and grow and expand, we were also awarded $250,000 through the Wyoming Innovation Partnership for computer science and cybersecurity. As you guys all know, business and industry, it's not just in business and industry, it's in nonprofit associations, all of that. the cybersecurity aspect to kind of make sure systems are secure, everything to that nature. We were actually given those dollars to help get that program. Cybersecurity for us was new, get that up and going, find an individual to kind of help us secure that training aspect of it. And then we revamped our computer science program to incorporate course sharing and development platform throughout the state of Wyoming. Next slide, please. This one here actually came through the Wyoming Community College Commission, and we partnered with them. It is all 8 community colleges as well as UW. And what we did here is this is a grant that was initiated for virtual reality and augmented reality to incorporate that into training and curriculum. We have been very successful at Western. We did this and we incorporated it actually into our information systems programming, and we're expanding it out this upcoming year into our nursing, as well as the library is going to do a project that actually different instructors can incorporate this in. Where this comes in and where it's real beneficial is obviously as you're kind of doing some of the educational learning environment, you can't necessarily be into a surgery and see different aspects of it, but through virtual reality, students can actually be part of that and see the different aspects of how things happen. Same things when you're looking at working on a car, to get into certain aspects of it or taking apart a car, they can actually do it in a virtual reality setting that actually enhances and complements the current training that currently goes on within the classroom. Next slide, please. To get started, this is what Ron and Jennifer asked me to speak about. We were given last year $1 million to expand our electrical and instrumentation program in Evanston. And as you can see there, the Unit 1 BOCES here in Evanston, Mike and Sheila have been outstanding as far as a partner goes. They embraced this openly, and they were super excited about the opportunity to do this. And as Lucas mentioned, one of the things when you're looking at skilled workforces, we might need to bring people in from outside here, which is why we chose Evanston. With the proximity there with Utah and the need that's coming in Southwest Wyoming, we looked at it as where are we going to be able to get some skilled labor to come in and kind of get this training and go to work here in Wyoming. And as much as we want all of our folks to be here in Wyoming, working in Wyoming, reality is the positions that are coming forward in Southwest Wyoming, we don't have the individuals to do all of this training and these occupations. So we chose to partner here with Sheila and Mike here at the BOCES, and they provided us classrooms. And as you can see, if you want to go to the next slide, please. This is what the classroom, and you're going to see several of these slides, and I'll kind of explain to you the aspect of this. What they did is they took 2 classrooms that currently existed. They were nice enough and they took out the wall for us to make one larger classroom. So as you can see from the different things, this is still under construction. Our classes start in August, and I promise you we will be ready. But this is kind of what it's looking like to begin with. So we have all of our courses for the first year. Like if you came to Rock Springs right now to do the training, all of our coursework that a student would take in the first year will be in these 2 the classrooms that have been combined in. So you see there, they got the bench space that is set up. We have it set up for 14. So there's 14 students who can be in the class. And each of those bench spaces, as they get through, you're going to see a video at the end that will kind of represent what it'll look like. But Casey Harden, who actually works for the high school there, is actually helping us in the evening and on the weekends to get this kind of coordinated for us. But the space here, how we have it set up, is you can see that there's a lot of open space to it, which is going to be some of the tables and chairs that come in front for the classroom. And on the right-hand side, you see there is where a lot of the supplies are going to go. And I know you can kind of briefly see on that last slide some tanks, and I'll get to those tanks here in a second. But each of these classes will take them through like basic AC/DC training, their initial instrumentation work. What's coming in phase 2, which will actually be incorporated in here, that we had submitted to the state, and we should find out here within the next couple of weeks, is actually to expand to do the 2nd year of training. The 2nd year of training would incorporate in the PLCs, the troubleshooting type of courses with motors and all of that will be added within this. If you want to go to the next slide, please. Again, just kind of a representation of what it looks like. This is still unpacking a lot of the stuff, the supplies, the cabinet that's over there. We're going to have electrical boxes that they will work with. We will have some trainers that are kind of some initial trainers to get them to work on before they actually kind of program some various things out. Go ahead and go to the next slide. So this piece here I wanted to share with you. So this is kind of the second part of the first year. So this is a tank farm is kind of what we're setting up. Students in their second semester within the electrical and instrumentation program will actually learn how to program the system to run the water from each of those containers and kind of measure what the water quality is, all of that across the board. So that's going to be our tank farm that's there. If you came into our Rock Springs campus right now, we have a very large tank farm, and due to space, we condensed them down to smaller. The concept is still the same. It's all integrated in this. Now, the piece that I have to share with you, why, again, we chose Evanston when you look at kind of location on doing training and all that. One I mentioned to you is bringing in the workforce kind of from even Utah to train them there and have them work within Wyoming. But as you look at the expansions of some of the projects that are going on and the locality between them and Evanston, this made sense to us. With the new Natrium facility coming on board in Kemmer, Evanston is a natural, again, to feed into that aspect, and I'll explain that again here in a second. I'm going to go ahead and have you go to the next slide. So to give you a little bit of perspective here, this is what the program looks like. So as I mentioned to you, you have the assembly and measure, you have AC/DC, and then it has some of the other classes there, which are kind of the gen ed classes. Those are a natural to actually be able to have within Evanston, that there's no issue to that piece of it. And then you got the instrumentation, motor controls, computer, English. So the equipment that you're seeing there, and there's still quite a bit that's on order coming in. Supply chain, unfortunately, still hasn't totally caught up to us yet. So there's some things that are kind of like lagging behind, but they'll all be in place by the August. But if you look at kind of like the coursework here that's set in place, everything that you saw within those rooms will take them through all of those electrical courses there. And if you want to go to the next slide. These are the pieces I was telling you that's coming, okay? So you've got the power distribution, the PLCs, the control systems, the more advanced instrumentation, as well as the advanced PLC and net troubleshooting component that I said. I mentioned to you when we first started, we have substation, we have power line. Both of those programs are heavily focused on electrical and instrumentation work within it. So the expansion to have E&I expanded into another location, again, it was space. And when you look at what we have at Rock Springs and you maximize the different components of it, we were running out of space. So to do this in Evanston, this allows students, we have quite a few students who actually live in Evanston who are in the power line program. They can actually do this training right there versus commuting up to kind of do this part at the college. And a lot of them actually commute. So we're kind of trying to like look at the different pieces. And when we kind of analyze this and talk to students, we tried to do what would work best for students. So substation is the same aspect of it. When you look at substation, a lot of what you see right here in this fall semester aspect of it is what substation is going to have. It's going to have a lot of those advanced features to it, and the power distribution, working with high voltage and all of that. All of that will be able to be offered as well in Evanston. And again, I did put the caveat that grant funding pending to build this out. This final lab is still pending. I don't anticipate any issues with it with the state, but I don't want to tell you guys it's guaranteed that it's not. We did apply for it. So I'm going to go ahead and have you go to the next slide, please. So this is the last semester. So then for them to actually earn the degree in it, they would take these additional classes. Again, these are classes that we consider kind of like the gen ed type classes, electives that are easily transferable from our main campus in Rock Springs to Evanston to offer. So it's the communication, it's the schematics, it's pneumatics, it's tech safety, all of that kind of stuff. But each of these are part of that. Now, when I talk to you about the Natrium facility coming in, I have experience working here, actually in Illinois with the nuclear facilities there. So when the Natrium facility kind of announced it there, I met with Mark Burback with TerraPower, and we kind of walked through some of the different components. What we have in Evanston right now in the courses that we're offering that first year are things that are a natural fit to what they need as far as some of the workload that they have at the Natrium facility. So again, this has all been done intentional with the alignment to kind of fit into multiple industries. So it will fit into the Natrium industry, it will fit into the Trota mines. All of that has been kind of thought through as far as to try and maximize what we're trying to do. Some of the new industries that we're looking at recruiting, again, throughout the service area, again, this is a natural fit to those. So I'll go ahead and have you go to the next slide there, please. And Jennifer, I don't know if you can play this video. I'm hoping it's going to play, but this will give you the idea of what it's going to look like. Is it not going to let you?
Amy, I click on it and it just advances.
It doesn't let you. Let me see if I can
Well,
get it.
well,
Let me see if I can drop it into chat and we can come back and maybe do it. I'll do that. Let me do that and I'll have you go ahead and go advance and we'll do it at the very end. One of the other things I wanted to share with you that also is part of what we are doing in Evanston, which I think is really key to kind of like seeing that piece to it, is we've actually partnered again with the BOCES, and we're doing CDL training. Again, different things to that nature with CDL training is when you look at, again, some of those programs that I talked to you about, like the power line, CDL is required for that. But in addition to that, it's also for trying to expand out what our opportunities are in that area. So a lot of folks want to just take this so they can get employment in that. We are actually bringing our trucks and our instructors there and doing this kind of training here in Evanston as well. So we're super excited about this as well. If you want to go ahead and go to the next. This is a service that we are going to be doing as part of bringing this E&I program out there. And one of the things Lucas talked about too was kind of doing that connection and the retaining of the employees here. One of the things that we've been extremely successful, obviously, with doing some of our workforce training is the partnerships we have with industry. And then we do career services that kind of help prep them as far as either on-campus interviews, preparation for internship opportunities, connecting them with employers, shadowing opportunities, helping them with their resumes. As sad as this is going to sound, somehow the soft skill part of it has gotten lost. And this is a piece that we've added back into this. And we will be doing the same stuff for the students who are taking the electrical and instrumentation. Evanston is providing these opportunities, doing the same connection that we do with employers. So they know that these skill sets are being earned and that in Evanston, they're here locally. These students that are doing, generally speaking, a lot of our career and tech ed programs, they're not leaving. They're here to stay in Wyoming. They want the stuff in Wyoming. And that's the reason that they chose the pathway that they did. So this right now is not currently done at Evanston, but it will be as we integrate this out here in the fall of 24. We will be doing the exact type of services that we have at the Rock Springs to make sure the students who are going through this aspect of it have the proper training as well and resources to help them be successful as far as getting a career in that. Go ahead and go to the next slide. Now, for those of you who may or may not know this, Tracy Dodsworth and Maria Cazares is actually our outreach staff that is located here in Evanston. Both these individuals will be assisting kind of with the E&I program, getting that up and going as far as taking enrollment, because they are actually our advisors, success coaches and that down there. But these are our two staff folks that are down there in Evanston. Outstanding individuals. They work very closely, obviously, with Sheila and Mike as well with the BOCES, and they are actually housed within the BOCES office. So those of you who are from the Evanston area, if you have not had an opportunity to meet Tracy or Maria, I would encourage you to do so. It's an opportunity so you get a local resource with Western. And again, if you would love to see the labs, they would be happy to give you a tour of them. Okay. And I think the next slide, okay, that's me. I'm going to try and get this real quick
I
here.
can't tell you.
I'm going to send this to you, Jennifer, if it's okay. Just send it to you in the chat. Hopefully that works. Sorry, you
Mr.
guys.
Chairman.
Yeah.
While they transfer files back and forth, I've got a quick question for the benefit of everyone else here. How many students have we put through the Powerline program? And what is it that's going to happen in the fall of this year, Amy?
Sure. So our first cohort, actually, we started off with 7. All 7 of those are employed. Our second cohort, we had 15, and actually, I believe it's 8. It might be 7, but I believe it's 8 that are actually employed. They stopped with the certificate, and the other 7 are continuing on for their associate's degree. This will be our 3rd year starting up here in the fall, and we are actually doubled. So we will actually have 2 cohorts going through it. And I have to share with you guys, and Ron, I appreciate that question. I have to share with each and every one of you, one of the things that's been very interesting with the development of some of these programs is that even though Wyoming, it's the only program within Wyoming that has the power line or substation, the utility companies that are throughout the area, like the surrounding states, have reached out to try to get them as well. So you talk about, Lucas, people leaving. They're going to leave because the demand is so high and they can't get these trained individuals. We have been very fortunate, though, I can say this, of the students who have gotten jobs, every one of them have been in Wyoming. So we're super proud of that. Thank you, Ron.
I'd like to add to that the Wyoming Innovation Partnership has been working with the UW Center for Economic and Business Analysis to really do some economic analysis on like the power line program. And what they found, and I don't know the numbers off my head, but there was such kind of a backlog that even 7 or 15 people getting through this program opens up all kinds of other jobs and creates other jobs. And I may see if I can find that information so you can kind of see that there's a huge economic impact to that one program.
Thank you.
All right. Yeah. We're ready for the video.
Welcome to Western Wyoming Community College, where dreams meet reality and innovation sparks opportunity. Our electrical and instrumentation technology program is designed to ignite your passion for technology and equip you with the skills needed to thrive in today's dynamic industries. Join us and turn your passion for technology into a rewarding career. Enroll in our electrical and instrumentation technology program today and embark on a journey towards success.
Jennifer, thank you for showing that. The reason I asked her to show the video was, as you saw there, all of the panels were completed in with all the, the switches and the wires and everything. That is what will be in Evanston. So everything you just saw in that video is what the labs will look like there in Evanston. And that is the piece that I just wanted to point out to you. We actually wanted to do the video in Evanston, but it wasn't ready yet to kind of create that. So actually in the fall, when it gets up and going, we're going to do another video down in Evanston just to kind of help promote that out further. But again, as I mentioned, and I thank Ron for actually sharing that other piece, this was strategically designed to go there in Evanston. And the aspect of it, again, is it feeds into not only the power line program, the substation program, just the electrical and instrumentation that people may want to do. But we are also going to we've submitted to the state for a nuclear program to kind of help do that aspect of it. And electrical is part of it, the electrical and instrumentation. We're not going to duplicate that. We're going to actually leverage what we have in Evanston to the pieces that we're going to add in Kemmer. And the whole goal is obviously to get the qualified skilled labor that we need and place them into these positions right here in Wyoming. And with that, I will answer any other questions anybody might have.
Hi, Amy. My name is Sarah Dorenzo, and I work with Governor Mark Gordon's office. And I just wanted to commend Western Wyoming College. I know the governor sees the work that you're doing as exemplary of his idea with the Wyoming Innovation Partnership and the way that the college and your industry partners and the community have taken the data of our job markets and what we're going to need and really applied it in a visionary way. And the momentum that you've been able to gain is so impressive. And you're a shining example of what we always hoped that WIP would turn into. So thanks for all your hard work and everyone at the college. And of course, the Rocky Mountain Power 2 and all of your other industry partners for just making this such a huge success. And we already know, as Director Gagan said, about the ROI on the students and the contributions they're already making. And so it was a really good investment of the legislature's dollars towards the Wyoming Innovation Partnership too. And so we're super grateful for that continued support that is obviously flowing right on the ground and making immediate impact to Wyoming. So thank you.
I thank you, and I thank you on behalf of Dr. Dale as well. I know she did a wonderful job as far as advocating that at the state level, but these initiatives would not have happened without Governor Gordon's support, so we appreciate that as well.
Yeah, thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Amy. It looks like we have got one more question. So Brenda?
Yeah, good morning. This is Brenda Morgan. Amy, a quick question. What would be the cost for a student to participate in the E&I program? Roughly, it looks like it was 65 credit hours. And I'm assuming it looks like you've adjusted those semesters to be full-time. Is that with the hope that they will either get federal financial aid or the employers are going to reimburse them for attendance?
So actually, that's a great question. The cost for a student to go through it, whether it's full-time or part-time, is approximately $11,500. That's the cost for a student going through it with the current tuition rate and kind of the fees established where they're at. Now, that does not take into account books. What's interesting with this is, and I'll share this, is we've had a lot of employers come forward and they are actually funding students to go through the program. So they're doing scholarships and sponsorships that take them through the entire 2 or 4 semesters, 2 years, 4 semesters. So it's totally up to that. But we also, these programs are approved through the Workforce Services. We also work with Workforce Services as far as their internship programs as well. So for individuals who are currently employed, if they choose to kind of do some additional training, that opportunity is there for them as well. So those pieces are vital, but the cost is approximately $11,500.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yes, real quick, Mr. Berger, Representative.
Thank you. And Representative Berger here, Amy, and thank you again for your presentation. Just can't wait to go see the facility here in Evanston, being the representative even from this district, and can't wait to go see all the hard work that's being put in. And not only that, but participating in seeing the first group to graduate from there. So my question is, how are you seeing it? I mean, I'm seeing as I walk around Evanston or talk to people in the community, how do I access this, especially tuition and things? I know there's programs like the Wyoming Tomorrow Scholarship. If people want to get out of, I don't want this career path, but I'm looking for another career path. Are you willing? I'm assuming you're willing to work with those in transit or credit recovery or looking at the transcripts are good, and just these are the classes you need to work on. When will this program start, and when can we start? Will kids with they graduate high school use their Hathaway scholarship as well? That kind of stuff.
That's a great question, and answer to all of that is yes. So Tracy, who's actually at our Evanston campus, is our advisor for that area. She can actually assist them to go through the Wyoming's Tomorrow Scholarship if they're an adult 24 or older. The Hathaway, again, she can help apply that. She can assist them through scholarships that are available as well, because we do have companies that have sponsored the E&I program that have scholarships that they can apply for in addition to it. And that is regardless if they're part-time or full-time. All of those services are there. And Tracy would serve as the liaison for that. Our E&I program will start in the fall of 24 there in Evanston. They are actually doing, we have 2 sources. The college as a whole is doing social media advertisement, as well as our Evanston location has their own social media channels that they've been advertising as well. But if you have any students, whether it's for E&I or a different program that need assistance, please refer them over to Tracy at the BOCES building there. She would be happy to assist them. She can walk them through financial aid. She can get them connected to scholarships and all of that aspect of it. And if there's a group at a company that you want us to come talk to, I'd be happy to help with that as well.
Awesome. Thank you.
You're
Again,
welcome.
thank you, Amy, and congratulations on all the wonderful stuff that's going on. So,
Thank you. And thanks for this opportunity, you guys.
yes. All right. So our next agenda item is going to be Rocco talking to us about the City of Evanston community development. So come on down.
Uh-oh, this is gonna be out there.
Yeah, just give us a couple minutes to get some tech stuff. So if you need to stretch the legs, water break, go for that.
Get it?
All right, so council, we're gonna take our break early. So we got some technical stuff. So we're gonna reconvene. What time do you want to reconvene at? Let's recon 9:55. Cool. So 9:55, we will reconvene. So take your break. See you then. We'll reconvene at 10. Thank you all again for the patience as we kind of work through some technical stuff, but I think we are ready to go. So Rocco, thank you for being with us today, and go for it.
Thank you. I'll try to stay in front of the microphone, but I have a tendency to wander. So we're just going to do kind of a quick, I'll try to make it quick, economic overview of Evanston and Uintah County and get you guys up to speed.
Yeah. Otherwise,
Again, I
our
wonder.
people won't hear you. Yeah.
That might be a good thing.
Nope.
Okay. So here's a little overview of Evanston's economy in 2023. Median household income, 72,638, median age 39. 17% of our population is above the age of 65, and 25% of our population considers themselves retired. The portion of our citizens with a bachelor's degree or higher is a lot lower than the rest of the state. But there are some benefits that we have here in Evanston for employers. Labor force within a 75-mile radius. You can see there within a 75-mile radius of Evanston, just under 1.2 million people. And just a quick comparison to Cheyenne, the Front Range over on that side of the state at 472,370. Not saying we're better, it's not a competition here. It's just to kind of give you an idea of proximity to major markets down here in the southwest corner. And there obviously that's a population estimate. We have census data from 20, but based on our GIS data, we're looking at just over 12,000 people here in Evanston. Uintah County, we have a population estimate of 20,745, labor force of 8,970. And the recent unemployment data that just came out, we're sitting just under 4%. It's pretty standard across the state. Something that may be a little bit unique down here in the southwest corner is we have a commuting population. So Lincoln, Sweetwater, Uintah, and then Summit County down in Utah, we exchange labor force quite a bit, but Uintah County has a net export of labor force. And then here's to give you a little bit of an idea of what Uintah County's economy has looked like over the last 10 years. Obviously, this is 2021 data. Hopefully it's a little better in 2023 and 2024, but our population peaked there in the end of 79, early 80s, similar to across the state with the oil and gas boom. And it's sort of been tapering off ever since. We had a little bit of a spike in 2006 through 2009, but again, it's tapered off since then. Employment trends, the peak was 09, and I'll talk a little bit about some of our energy employers that left us around that time period. And then personal income, you can see there again, peaking in 09, and it's slowly been tapering off, starting to come up here after the 2020 recession. So I know you had a talk with Harvard Growth Lab this morning, and the theme was sort of let's have an honest conversation with ourselves. It's hard to do economic development if you can't look at yourself honestly in the mirror and honestly evaluate what your local economy looks like. So I could paint a bright, rosy picture and say, look at Uintah County's GDP. Since 2020, we've been on, a rocket ship up, but that's just not the honest truth. This is kind of a more honest look at what Uintah County's GDP looks like. And you can tell in 2017 dollars, we're down about 11-12%. And 19 to 20 was 10.5% of that. So we're really climbing out of a hole. And I think that's pretty standard across the state, other than maybe Sweetwater, Campbell, Laramie County, Teton County. Certainly they've done pretty well. And that'll give you a little more of an idea of where our Wyoming counties are at since 2019 as far as GDP. Uintah down here at the bottom, about I think it's 1.6% from 21 to 22. But an 11.2% real dollar GDP loss from 2019 to 2020. So the bright spot is that personal income in UNT County is climbing. Obviously, you've seen the CPI data. I think CPI came out today or yesterday, slightly lower than expected. Hopefully it keeps trending that way. But personal income is on the rise. Our population under the poverty level is shrinking. So that's a good sign to me that people are getting employed, getting good jobs, staying employed, and hopefully doing better. So we're a little bit unique in that our industry clusters here, our top cluster, if you will, is in the health and medical services industry. Obviously, the Wyoming State Hospital, Evanston Regional Hospital, and the cluster of medical service industry out there south of town, heavy construction, real estate, transportation, and finance and banking. And that's just a little bit different view of that. Healthcare and social assistance comprise about just under 20% of Evanston's economy. And that's a target industry for us. That's an industry that we'd like to recruit and grow and hopefully keep employing doctors and medical workers that make good incomes and can put their kids in our schools and spend their money here locally and grow the economy. But manufacturing there, we're slightly under the state average. I think the state average is about 6%. For manufacturing, we're at 3.7. 195-ish manufacturing jobs. I would bet that's closer to 250 at this point. And then technology. The margin for error there is probably 20. So take that with a grain of salt, but that is a target industry for us. We would like tech jobs here, and we're trying to figure out the best method to recruit those industries and encourage young people to dive into a technology-based form of employment. So what are we doing about our target industry? So in 2019, when I started, we conducted a target industry study, and it took a snapshot of Evanston's economy and said, what are some realistic target industries that this community could go after and grow and grow an employment base and create a cluster and hopefully increase wages, median and personal income. And we've been successful. We created a website. We created some targeted marketing campaigns with Exo Marketing. In 2020, we recruited ISA Corporation. They're a rubber products manufacturer out of Oregon. They also have manufacturing plants in Mexico and Alabama. But the facility here will really manufacture rubber linemen's electrical gloves. And I know we talked a little bit about the electrical instrumentation program and some of the good things that Western Wyoming's doing. So that'll fit in nicely with the region. And then some smaller employers, Wasatch Sips. It's a structurally insulated panel manufacturer. Kit Homes, they build kit homes for panels, ship them out onto site, and then construct the homes in really 3 weeks or less. Victor Arms is a small caliber firearms accessory manufacturer. If you guys went to the SHOT Show, you might have met that company. This last year, we recruited a beer manufacturer out of Salt Lake City, and that's all the construction and fun things happening over here in Section 4 of the Roundhouse, and I'll talk a little bit about that at the end of the presentation. But it's a brewery, distillery, manufacturing, and it's also a tap room restaurant. So a little bit of manufacturing, but also kind of a quality of life improvement and getting some income coming in back to the city for the Roundhouse, all the investment we made in the Roundhouse. And then just in the last couple of months, we recruited Apex Performance out of Park City, Utah. They're an off-road vehicle parts manufacturer. We just sold them about 6 acres of property over here in Union Center Business Park. And hopefully they'll be constructing their facility next spring. So this is Union Center Business Park. For those of you who haven't driven through there, our beautiful Purple Sage Golf Course, Mitsubishi Chemical, Carbon Fiber, Clean Energy Corporation. You can see there where ISA, the rubber glove manufacturer, is going. And then this dirt lot north of Clean Energy is Apex. So we really have 2 lots left in our city-owned business park, about 23 acres of land available. So I would like to acquire more land and start doing a little bit of what Cheyenne Leads is doing. And then on the other side, Union Tank Car, I believe they're either the second or third private employer in town as far as the volume of labor, and they pay really good wages. Great partner. They've been in the community for about 40 years, and they bought that land in the late 90s, early 2000s. And then this red section here is Mitsubishi's right of first refusal for an expansion of a third line in their carbon fiber manufacturing processes. Here's an overview of our major manufacturers. Obviously Mitsubishi, about 75 employees. It fluctuates between 50 and really 80, depending on how many shifts they're running. BPI Labs is a personal care and cosmetic products manufacturer just north of town here. They're in the county, but 100% of their employees are out of Evanston. And then Clean Energy Corporation, they manufacture liquid natural gas fuel systems, and they employ about 30 people. So let's talk about some new development. Project West. Oh, that's the wrong West. This is Project West. Sorry. Okay. I tried to bring a little bit of humor, be a little entertaining for you. Project West is a trona mine going in Sweetwater County. It's a $2.6 billion investment in Sweetwater County, Southwest Wyoming. It's 18 miles southeast of Granger. There's about a 24-month construction period estimated, just under 1,300 construction workers at peak, and a monthly average of 802 full-time equivalent workers over the next 2 years, just over 300 full-time permanent employees. And so that's an enormous investment for Sweetwater County and the state of Wyoming. I have an industrial siting commission hearing tomorrow morning to talk a little bit with them about the impacts to Evanston, but we're not done. Obviously, TerraPower has been a huge topic of discussion in the state and certainly down here in the southwest corner. The number changes every time I read. It started at 2 billion. 3 billion, 4 billion. I'm sure it'll end up somewhere around $5-6 billion investment. Just south of Kemmer, 40 miles north of Evanston. Construction is hopefully going to be completed. It's estimated right now about Q4 of 2029 based on their application to the Nuclear Commission. 3,000 construction workers at peak and 300 plus full-time permanent employees. And I don't know if this one has been formally announced yet, but we should see this at the Industrial Siting Commission here in the next few weeks. This is the Dry Creek Trona project. This is a $6 billion investment in Sweetwater County, just north of the Utah border. Dry Creek is located south of Green River. It's a pretty remote location, but construction will begin about the same time that the Project West construction begins. 4,200 construction workers at peak, 530 full-time permanent employees. So Sweetwater County is really getting after it as far as trona mining is concerned. So what's the estimated impact to Evanston? And I'll talk with the Industrial Siting Commission a little bit about this tomorrow. But we anticipate on average about 500 additional people in Evanston over the next 2 to 5 years. For us, that's a healthy growth rate. We can definitely absorb that. It's only 4.2%. This community, our water services, our water systems, stormwater, sewer, we're all built for about 30,000 people. When the boom took off, we thought Evanston was going to be, the next Denver, Colorado. So we're really overbuilt and prepared for growth. That's not a concern here. The area of concern is obviously public safety, impact to our police and emergency services there. In order to capture that growth, what we really need is the private sector to come in and build residences, build commercial space, and develop private property for these additional people and businesses that are coming into town. And what else is Evanston up to? Because a lot of this is regional. Evanston's not directly involved in the Trona mines or the nuclear facility, but we will definitely be impacted by that. But what are we doing to prepare for some growth and to certainly try to build the economy? Our master plan is 20 years old, Berger. It's about 20 years old. It's the 2010 plan, so it's been expired for 15 years at this point. We have grants into YDOT, and we anticipate submitting a grant to the Wyoming Business Council to update that comprehensive plan. We really want to simplify our zoning ordinances, streamline development processes, so you're not sitting through P&Z meetings and city council meetings for months at a time. And then our zoning ordinances, we have like 30 different zones. And so we want to shrink that down, make it easier to interpret and really invite development through our zoning processes. And then on the primary ballot this fall, we're going to introduce an economic development sales tax, a 0.5-cent sales tax. These funds will be invested back into the community through public improvements, grants, rebates, workforce training programs. And you heard from Amy right before me, but we would like to partner with NextGen, the Urban Renewal Agency, UNT County Economic Development, BOCES, our local school district, Western Wyoming, and Jumpstart to try to incentivize and create workforce training programs that meet industry needs. So that's a little look at what that 0.5-cent would produce in UNT County. Right at about $2.5 million annually is what we anticipate, and Evanston would receive about 1.5 million of that 2.5 million. And Jumpstart Evanston, for those of you that went to Webster Mycology yesterday morning, Ron, was it yesterday morning? Afternoon, my apologies. Austin was one of our Jumpstart recipients, and that's a pretty cool story there. That business is only 3 or 4 years old, and Austin's just a young guy with a lot of energy and really getting after it. But Jumpstart started as a UNT BOCES program. It was a collaboration with Mike there at BOCES. And we said, okay, if we want to grow Evanston's economy, we need to grow our entrepreneur base, create that entrepreneurial cluster. How do we do it? We don't want to over-engineer it. What's the simplest way to take this to the community and get benefit, create businesses, and incentivize entrepreneurship? And so we created a 7-week program. Every week we talk about a different business discipline, how to write a business plan, business accounting, maybe a little bit of legal advice, startup business marketing, those sorts of areas. And then at the end, those businesses can submit their business plan and we provide grants. At this point, we've granted over $60,000 to local businesses and provided free education to, I don't know what number I put in there, but I think it's about 150 folks in Evanston and UNT County. As promised, the Roundhouse Project. Over the last 7 years, we've invested about $8 million into improving this facility. We'll invest another 2 to 3 million this next year. We have a parking lot improvement project going in. This courtyard in here where it's dirt and materials, this will be improved into a community gathering space. And then obviously section 4 of the Roundhouse is where Shades of Pale Brewing is going. And we're pouring, that was last week, we're pouring the finished floor in there actually this week. So it's moving pretty quickly. I promised I'd give you time back at the end. I wanted to be quick, but if you want to learn more about what's going on in Evanston, businesswyoming.com, visit evanston.com or jumpstartevanston.org. You can read a little bit more about us, and I'll stand for questions.
Yep.
Yeah, thank you, Eric, Mr. Chairman. And Rocco, can you talk a little bit about what the horse racing community and even the lottery and gaming community has brought to Evanston, and what that's done for our economy and our local governments, or
yeah,
even
absolutely,
the future of it?
Yeah, and Trudy just sent, we're doing budget, and Trudy just sent us revenues from last year. And so I could have given you an exact number, but horse racing, historic horse racing has been enormous for Evanston. It's a huge source of revenue for the city of Evanston. Definitely a benefit for tourism. When that horse track opens up, thousands of people from Utah flood up here, and that track is just ripping and going. I don't know the numbers off the top of my head, but they're huge. And lottery is very similar. When the Powerball gets over $1 billion, good luck getting gas in Evanston. I mean, it kind of gets crazy.
Hi, Rocco.
Hey, Sarah.
Those numbers for construction workers, I mean, that's pretty high workforce need. What has the discussion been like about trying to find that much construction workers and the overlap of those projects? I mean, that just seems like a huge challenge.
I wish I had the answer. I don't know. And I don't know if anybody has the answer. Ron, I know Western Wyoming and Next Gen have been working on programs for these construction workers. You could speak better to this than I can.
So not all of the construction workers are going to come from Wyoming. I do know that on the Terra Power project, they have a vendor process, and there's quite a few vendors across Wyoming that have been picked up by that process. Exactly how they're all going to be brought in, that'll be up to Bechtel. On the other projects, to get them up and running is going to require more employees than the state of Wyoming is capable of supplying. But I do know that they are tapping into the local resources and bringing the people in Wyoming forward that they can. But there's just not enough people. That the program that Amy was talking about earlier, where they're building the new health and science building, we had one person or one company respond back to the RFP. One. So it makes it rather difficult to say that you're going to just use strictly, Wyoming employees whenever there's one company that happens to be from Wyoming. But that's the challenge that we're facing across all of Southwest Wyoming with all of these projects. And Rocco didn't even list them all.
It's going to be a challenge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and then I imagine that's gonna, impact, like, when there's the need's so great in one part of the state, then other places are gonna feel it because of a shortage then, as everyone's working down in one part. So yeah, real demonstrated need.
Yeah, Dr. Aldrich, I think you had a question.
Chairman Treadway, I just had a quick question. You said you're going to do a 0.5 cent economic development tax. Are you partnering that or pairing that with another spot tax of some sort? Or are you literally going to go out for a 0.5 cent?
We're literally going after a 0.5 cent. We were trying to work with our parks department on a 6-penny option. Unfortunately, they just couldn't get all of the information that they needed before the deadline for our county. Oh gosh, Amanda, what's Amanda's title? County clerk. Before the deadline. But that, I imagine that will be on the next ballot.
So quite literally at a 0.5 cent, it's going to be rounded up on almost every item to a full cent. So really you're going to get the full cent in most cases.
I'm going to hold off on answering that because I don't fully understand exactly how that process works at the county and the state level. But to my understanding, we're just getting that 0.5 cent. I don't think it's a roundup to the full percent situation.
Is it going to be through sales tax or through property tax?
Through sales tax.
Okay, thank you.
Great. Other council discussion? Anyone online? Want to talk to Rocco? I guess my question would be a lot of really cool stuff happening in the Southwest region of Wyoming. Like, what is, out of all of this stuff, what is your most exciting? What are you excited about the most? Your top of mind?
Man. there's so much to be excited about. I'm really excited about Wyoming's economy over the next 4 or 5 years, especially in Southwest Wyoming, because I think Utah is just chock full, and prices, everyone's getting priced out of the market, especially small businesses. So I'm excited about growth potential. I'm excited about small business and small industry looking at Wyoming as their next headquarters. But the data about proprietorship in the state of Wyoming, people starting small businesses and building those businesses and employing locally, is really what I'm passionate about. So for me, the most exciting thing is the resources that we provide locally, the SBDC provides, the SBA provides, the Wyoming Business Council provides. I think there's never been a better time than now to be a small business owner in the state of Wyoming.
Great. Thank you, Rocco. Any other questions or discussion from council?
Yeah, just Mr. Chairman, just a quick question. Could you talk a little more about how the collaboration looks for economic development, workforce, private industry, tourism? You're obviously not going alone, but what's it require the community at your local capacity to collaborate and pull off all the great things you want to do?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've been very fortunate in that our county, our Chamber of Commerce, certainly city staff, different departments have all been rowing in the same direction. And Kylie and the Wyoming Business Council have been awesome to work with as well. But we have the same problem that most communities have, with the same 10 people are volunteering for most of the organizations. It helps in certain areas, but it also hurts. But I will say we have county commissioners on our tourism board. We have Chamber of Commerce on our tourism board. We have, tourism board members on our urban renewal agency board. And so we have no choice but to collaborate on most economic development organizations in the community. And so it's just been awesome. Everyone's hopped in and provided, what they're able to provide. School district's been amazing. But I think Evanston wants to grow. We want to do well for ourselves. We want to do well for our citizens. And so there's not been two agencies pulling in opposite directions or infighting or any of that. It's all been, this is the direction, let's all row together. Does that help answer your question, Ron?
Mr. Chairman, before we move on, Rocco, I think you passed over one of the most, shall I use the word contentious projects in Evanston with the state hospital?
Oh, wait. Yeah. Yeah. So a little background here. Obviously there was a study done by the Department of Health and I believe it was the Wyoming State Hospital Task Force of the legislature. They did a study evaluating whether the current or the old state hospital campus could accommodate growth, what the cost benefit analysis of redeveloping that old campus was. And it ended up that it was worth vacating that old campus and building the new campus next door to it. In 2020, we got a grant from the Wyoming Business Council. The city of Evanston got a grant from the Wyoming Business Council to do a feasibility study on adaptive reuse of that old campus. We spent several months, maybe 12, 16 months, really evaluating, doing pro formas on different industries on that campus. And it's wonderful. A year ago, 2 years ago, it was in really great shape. I don't know if it's still in the same shape. I imagine it's deteriorating. It's been contentious. We have citizens, we have groups of citizens and elected officials that really want to push and find a user and adaptive reuse, do what we did to the roundhouse up at the historic state hospital campus. And then we have others that would rather see the demo and reuse of the raw land. So the city doesn't own the property. It's a state of Wyoming property. We're trying to be as helpful as we can be without hopefully being annoying or hurtful. We have a few interested developers, one out of Utah, one out of Oregon, that would really like to to redevelop that campus and use some of our tax increment financing tools available through our urban renewal agency. But again, it's not a city decision. And so it's how can we facilitate development on that property, whether it's adaptive reuse or demo and reconstruct. That's tough. It's been a tough process, but we're trying to be helpful. And we'll continue to work on it.
Great. Thank you, Ron and Rocco. Any other final discussion before?
No, thank you
Final
guys for
words?
having me. This is really just scratching the surface. There's a million things that I could have talked about. I tried to pick a few things out. But if any of you have questions or want to talk a little bit, I'm always available. I can give my cell phone number. Always happy to talk economic development, workforce development. So thank you.
Awesome. Well, yeah, thank you for being here. And then thank you also for you continuing this theme of like teams win. We need to partner with each other to get all this like amazing stuff to happen. So, going to that mycology, Jumpstart Evanston, really cool stuff to see it in practice. So just great job. And we're here to help.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rocco. All right. So next on our agenda, we're going to have Ivy present state planning for the plant.
Good morning. So there's nothing like following up all these exciting things that are happening in a community with strategic planning. But I actually think that this conversation will really kind of help you all as a council identify how we work together, not only with the federal funding requirements that we have, but then the vision that you have for helping develop a workforce system as well. So one of the collaboration is something that we have heard a lot about the last couple of days, right? And in all of your meetings, whether that's WIP, what's happening with the community colleges, the city of Evanston, collaboration is something that's really important. It's also an integral part of the WIOA program, because if you think about how that is structured, your four core title partners, they all have to be at the table and participating together. So you guys are probably aware that we've just recently submitted our next 4-year plan for WIOA. And this is something that happens often with strategic plans. You go through all of the work and then you think, good job, we've got a good plan. And then what happens? They sit there and oftentimes they don't get looked at again. Are we doing what we said we were going to do? Are we meeting the goals that we set for ourselves? Are we achieving what we had hoped to achieve? So one of the things that we decided we were going to do with the state plan, and when I say we, it really was Jennifer and Christy, mostly Christy, but we took the plan in each of the title areas and we pulled it apart and said, okay, what are the goals that have been established? Title I, Title II, Title III, Title IV. And then putting it into a document so that we could compare it against the council's strategic plan. I'm sure you all recall that in early last year, we kind of wrapped up at least the initial portion of the council's strategic plan. So we wanted to compare them side by side because I think it's really important for you to understand, as well as the title partners, how is it that we are working together? Do we have the same goals? Or is there good alignment between the goals that the title partners are wanting to work on and the vision that you all have for really creating a robust workforce system for the state of Wyoming? So we dug through the state plan and we pulled out all of the goals that were identified in each partner section. And we outlined them there, and then we went through and we started doing some preliminary assessment on who's going to be the primary, who's going to have that primary responsibility for fulfilling those goals. And then, so the next step that we're going to take with this is we're going to take each of these strategies and start breaking them down into those tactics. How are we going to accomplish these strategies? What is that going to look like? And of course, that's going to involve input from our core partners. And part of the reason we got into this and we were rolling pretty good, pretty excited about how the progress we were making on pulling this together. But then we have the Fed response to the state plan, and everyone was working on that. So we said, we're not going to tax people more right now. We'll wrap up that process with the feds on the state plan. And then we'll start meeting with those title partners so that we can really drill down into these strategies. I guess I'm wondering how many of you saw the executive summary that was prepared based on so some of you, if you haven't seen that yet, we can make sure that is on board and you can review it. It was just a 2-3 page recap of the entire state plan. And then we took that with the strategic plan that you all had worked on, and we tweaked just a little bit with that plan to make sure that the plan itself that the council had developed was aligning with the requirements of the WEO Act. So I just wanted to give you guys a little bit of an update on kind of how we're working through that strategic planning part of it. And I think it's important that we talk about the next steps for the strategic plan for the council as well. Because if you recall, where we left things in February of last year, 2023, was we really had just gotten through that 1-year phase. So we still have a little bit more work that we need to do to build out through years 3 and 5. And you have a little bit of, you have a little bit left in that contract that you had with the line. So before we really kind of proceed with the next steps with the strategic planning, I wanted you to be able to see very clearly what was outlined in the state plan, so you can think about how do you incorporate all of this so that your vision and how you want to move forward is in alignment with the core partners. And I think that your core partners would really appreciate that as well, because sometimes when they go in to do plan development, it's like, well, we think this, and I don't know that we've really had that conversation as a council. Has the council given us that clear direction? So this is just that opportunity to take a close look at what everyone is saying that they feel are important goals, and how do we make sure that we are all on the same page and completely aligned. So it's very quick, but I do want to open it up for questions and thoughts and discussion on how do you want to proceed with strategic planning, not only for you as a council, but for the development of the workforce system for Wyoming. Yes.
Mr. Chairman, can I add some comments? So this spreadsheet so all the goals are the state plan goals as directed by the council. So the black highlighted is what you said the goals were. Then the strategies, some of your strategies for that year 1 are in here. But then we don't have the rest because you didn't make 2, 3, and 4 because that wasn't where we were in the process. Now you'll see there are significantly more strategies that say something like, I'll pick one that says DVR will participate in the building of cross-program knowledge for Wyoming Workforce Center staff. These are the rest of the strategies that the core partner programs put in the state plan that they're going to work towards. So this document is the entire workforce systems goals and strategies to date. So it has some of yours and a bunch of the cores. And that the reason why I say to date is because the council, the next steps in the council's process was to relook at a lot of those strategies and then build 2, 3, and 4s, because the line just helped us with year 1.
Yes, Dr. Aldrich?
EP through you, I'm just curious, with the new WIOA legislation that was passed, all 999 pages of it, is that going to change or impact what we had in our state plan, or will that not happen until our next submission?
That's an excellent question. And just as a little bit of clarification, it did pass the House. It has not passed the Senate yet, though. So we don't know what that's going to look like until it actually does pass both branches and is signed by the president. We are aware that there are some significant changes that are outlined in that, in the proposed act and what was voted on by the House. But the bottom line is that until we see the final version and we know what compromises happen between the two bodies, we just won't know for sure.
Mr. Chairman?
Yep.
Just reflecting back on some conversations had last night on the council and moving forward and how we do things maybe a little different. It doesn't make sense to take a few of these and expand on them, and next council meeting or each council meeting set aside an hour or 2 hours of time to focus on those, develop those plans fully and just start pecking away at this. I know we were appointed to this council not because we're good listeners. And my experience on the council is we sit here and we listen to a lot of presentations, and I fully understand there's federal reporting guidelines we must follow. Is there a way we minimize that to use the horsepower in this room to put some minds together and actually start pecking away at this and being proactive instead of just listening to reactive data?
Thank you, Larry. Yeah, we did. There's been a lot of really great conversations, and really, I think about this council, it's our job and our responsibility and our duty to make that come to life. Right. So this is our objectives. These are our directives. How do we make that come to life? And when I'm looking at this list, we spent, a year in our strategic planning. I like our strategic plan a lot. And you look across this room, there's so many great minds here. If you don't know the answer, there's someone in this room that does, or they know someone who does have that answer, right? So I think I totally agree. Even when we look at something like goal number 3 with enhanced access to services, one of the bullets there is ensure the new MIS system will meet user needs. So it's our job to kind of create, what does that definition of done look like? How do we know when we can check the box that, yes, actually our new MIS system does meet the user needs? It's our job as a council to really define what that is and know when we're checking the boxes appropriately. So definitely agree. And also, when it comes to these strategic plans, just want to make sure that when we put together all this brain power and knowledge, it just doesn't go sit somewhere and just kind of collect dust. We should be living and breathing this, right? This is kind of our North Star per se.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Larry. And I think that that's a really important question. And we've been having a lot of conversations about how do we better deliver the information that you need and that the core partners need to be able to share with you. And so one of the things that we've been talking about and kind of exploring is that making sure that that's the information that you're getting. You're getting where are we at on the goals? Are we meeting them? Are we hitting our objectives? And so dedicating a portion of our time so that everybody can give those updates specifically as they tie to the strategic plan and the state plan. I'm hoping that will provide a better understanding of how the entire system works together. And then that will also help generate conversation, because in 2 years we have to do an update to the plan. And it would be really great if we had really clear direction on, okay, so here are the goals that we identified. We met this goal. We didn't meet this goal. Why didn't we meet this goal? Is it we need to change our tactics? Is it is there something that we thought that we could do, but we can't do? But it's really important that we're having that conversation on a regular basis as we're preparing every 2 years for either a full rewrite or an update.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Ron.
on engaging community outreach, I don't know exactly, if it came from the local office over in Rollins or where, but they had a career fair back on May 7th. And they did reach out to the partnership and get it into the newsletter, and we broadcasted it out across all of Southwest Wyoming for them. So I do know that some of those goals up there are being addressed by the local service centers. So
Great. Thank you for that update, Ron. Any other council discussion or questions or comments on our strategic plan? All right. Well, hearing none, thank you, Ivy and team, for putting this together, and looking forward to kind of seeing it all kind of coalesce and go from there. So do we need to vote on this? I don't think. Nope. Cool.
All right. Thank you very much. So I guess you know now to be prepared that strategic planning is going to come up frequently.
Yes, we'll talk about it every single time. Thank you very much, Ivy and team. Great. All right. Well, moving right along, we're going to be moving on to our next agenda item, which is going to be presented by Robin on our spending plan and expenditure. So is Robin? Oh, there's Robin. Hi, Robin. How are you today? Good to see you. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Hello, everyone in the room. Just waiting for the expenditure report to be brought up, and then we'll take a quick look, and then I'm happy to answer any questions that you all might have. Okay, thank you, Jennifer Wilch. So yeah, just in taking a quick look, we are reviewing the last quarter expenditures, which are January, February, and March. What you'll see is that we are still spending out of grant fiscal year 22 and 23 with 68% of total funding remaining. We are anticipating getting our new allotments in the coming months for the next grant fiscal year. For March expenditures, of that 53,000, it's a little bit higher because we had a $30,000 payment for Career Edge. And if you could scroll down, we'll take a quick look at the project statuses. You can see what we have remaining left to pay out is just over 184,000. And if there are no questions, Mr. Chairman, we can move on to the local side.
Yeah, any discussion from council on this part before we go to local? All right.
Thank you. So taking a look at the local side, we are spending pretty rapidly in the current grant year, which is actually what DOL likes to see. So we're right on target. We have 93% spent, and I'm happy to answer any questions that the council might have at this time.
Council questions, discussion? No, it looks like we're on track for another good fiscal year, so good work there.
Yes, sir.
We do need to vote, right? All right, cool. Well, hearing no discussion, I will welcome a motion to approve our spending plan and expenditures in this meeting. Do I have a motion?
Also, I'll make that motion.
Okay, Representative Berger, so moved. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All right, seconded by Michael Kirchner. And any council discussion? All right, hearing none. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. The spending plan and expenditures has been passed. Thank you again, Robin, for all of your work and presenting to us today.
Thank you.
Okay, now moving on to our next agenda item is the WIOA fiscal year 24 funding model, and it'll be presented by Trevor Mansfield.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm here today for our annual funding model request for the council. You may remember this conversation from last year where the council took a lesser amount than what they're permitted. However, this year, the recommendation is for the council to take 15% of the eligible funds, which comes out to about $800,000. It's a little north of that. And this was approved in April by the Strategic Performance and Finance Committee to be recommended to the council for approval. We are able to, or the recommendation for the full amount comes from some actions from the legislature this year, as well as some savings that we've had through our transition to the MIS system. And I'd be happy to stand for any questions.
Council discussion and or questions? Yes, sir.
Can you talk a little bit specifically about what changes with the legislature that would increase the allowance?
Yeah, if Robin is still on, I would defer to her. And
I am still on. Would you mind repeating the question?
Robin, this is Sarah with Governor Gordon's office. I was just wondering what activities with the legislature that specifically that we're going to increase the back to the 15% allowance.
Thank you for your question. So we were granted the general fund ask that we had requested through the budget exception request this year. So that will allow for the council to then be more comfortable in electing to take their 15%. And I believe that previous discussions alluded to that's what the plan was going to be moving forward. And I don't know if Director Gagan would like to weigh in at all on this, but we did get the funding that we needed on the general fund ask. So that really brings us back to being more whole as a unit for funding.
Thank you. So it wasn't an increase in responsibilities for the county. It was a redistribution of money that allowed us to be able to take the allowance that in full. Right.
What it essentially did was these funds are flat funding and we're short in federal funds across the board. And because, you know, salaries and general admin expenses have increased over the years, of course, we all know that. We had asked for the general fund appropriation to help offset the deficit that we had for the cluster of the programs for the employment and training programs, not just WIOA.
Great. Any other council discussion or input? Yes. Yes.
I seem to add this comment every year that we talk about this. So the 2 years I've been here, this will make 3 that I make this comment. As always, the council can amend the allocation that they take or do a dollar amount amendment. And this is usually done sometime later when we can track spending more. And if the council doesn't have projects to fund, the participant dollars are always lacking. And as you've seen from the presentations today, I don't believe that that will change, that we'll have continue to serve, as you saw in the one-stop presentation yesterday, serve more participants. And the goal of the council is to send more people to the workforce centers to receive services. And with that requires additional funding. So as always, this is an item that can be amended throughout the years. So, or throughout the year. So as we move forward, the council can consider reallocating those funds at a different time. It's not a one vote and it can't change. It's not set in stone.
Well, thank you for clarifying, Jennifer. Yep. So based on that, any other discussion from council? Yeah. Oh, Travis, got Travis. Yes, Mr. Lawrence.
Thank you, Chairman. I just wanted to comment too, coming out of the Finance and Strategic Performance Committee, that same question, you know, was posed based off of the robust discussion that we had last year at the council level. And like Robin said, the answer was that there was more in general funds from the state. And, I don't know if some of it was also addressed by past Director Cooley with more funds coming from the Joint Appropriations Committee, and then requesting clawback of employment and training dollars, which helped, the council get the full allocation this year. But again, as Jennifer said, we're here to kind of be dynamic, and if the need arises, we can always adjust that. So that's just the comments coming out of the committee.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Lawrence, for that context from your committee. So great. Any other additional discussion before I welcome a motion to approve our PY 24 funding model?
Mr. Chairman, so moved.
All right, so moved by Mr. Kirschner. Do I have a second?
I'll second that, Mr.
All
Chairman.
right, Larry seconded. Do we have any further council discussion before we go to vote? All right, hearing none. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right, motion passes. So our next agenda item, also presented by Trevor, will be our PY 23 funding change.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Today I'm coming to you with the request to move $150,000 from the DWS admin budget to adult participant funding. We continue to see a need for more funds for participants and have had a decrease or not expended our administrative budget as much as anticipated. And so this spreadsheet that you can see on the screen highlighted in yellow shows the reduction of 150,000 to the administrative budget and adding that money to adult participants. And again, I just wanted to emphasize this is not the set aside that we were just talking about from previous. This is money that's for DWS to use and just shifting from administrative costs to adult participants.
Great, thank you, Trevor. There's one question. So did this go through Strategic Performance and Finance Committee as well?
Yes, thank you for that. They did recommend approval as well.
Going to say, Mr. Lawrence, do you have any context or any additions to this?
Yeah, just some further background on that. And the question, was posed, is that going to leave the administrative line item short by transferring the 150,000? And the answer was no, that there's considerable savings on that line item because of the new case management system is less expensive.
Awesome, great, thank you. Any other council discussion around this proposed change? Yes, sir.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can you talk more about what exactly the money is going to do in the adult participants program section?
Yeah, for sure. Thank you for that question. The participant funding will go towards supportive service and training services to help individuals get the support and training that they need so that they can gain more gainful employment. And so it'll be to support more individuals throughout the workforce centers across the state.
Mr. Chairman, a question. Trevor, I know 150,000 seems like a good dollar amount, but in reality, is that adequate for us to serve the number of clients that are coming through the doors? Just a curiosity question. Thank you.
Yeah, we believe it's adequate at this point. There was, I believe, some additional funds, and I think maybe Robin can speak to this if there's more questions on that, but there were funds from the employment support funds that were transferred as well to help in the interim here. So we do believe that this will be sufficient.
Thank you.
So, Mr. Chairman, Trevor, can you describe for me the difference between program operations and admin costs, please?
Certainly, I can do it at a high level, and if I miss anything, if Robin, you'll jump in. So program operations, that is the workforce centers in I believe that's where all that funding goes for that piece. So supporting the staff, the buildings and the costs that go with that. The administrative costs, that's the state level cost, fiscal, the grant management side of things.
And are those in line with national and regional averages between like the admin and overhead costs and the money going to directly to serve participants? Is that about average, you think? I'm just thinking.
Yeah, I don't know that information offhand. I'm not sure if Robin knows that, but
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead, Robin.
I don't know that we have a national average per se, but I will say that the administrative cap that the DOL implements is sufficient and in alignment with what normal grant admin activities are expected to be. I mean, we'd be happy to look into the question a little deeper on a national basis, but I don't know that that's data that we keep on hand.
I don't think that's necessary. I was just curious for my context. Thank you.
Yeah, great question. Thank you, Trevor. Looks like Brenda, yes, you have a question?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you. For those adult participants that are served, do they have to financially qualify for the services, or are they just considered like anybody who walks in as far as adults into the local workforce centers?
Great question. These funds are specifically for WIOA adult participants, so they would have to qualify under the program, the program eligibility to be eligible for the funds. There are, anybody can walk into the workforce center and get some basic career services like resume help and job searching, but that's a separate program that we have that's under Title III of WIOA, so it's the Wagner-Pizer program. But this funding request is specific for adult WIOA participants who usually would be lower in income.
Okay, and then just a follow-up question. So then dislocated workers, they do not have to meet financial income levels, correct?
Yes, that's correct. There's differences between the programs. We have the youth dislocated worker and adult, and dislocated workers have separate eligibility criteria. I don't know that all off the top of my head, but I know that that's you are correct in your statement.
Okay, thank you.
Great. Thank you, Brenda. Thank you, Trevor. Any other additional council discussion around the funding request / change? All right, hearing none, then I would welcome a motion to approve the funding change as presented.
So moved.
All right, moved by Mr. Wild. Do I have a second?
Second,
Who's that?
Nikki. Seconded by Nikki.
Oh, thank you, Nikki. All right, we got a second by Nikki. Do we have any further council discussion before we go to vote? All right, hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the funding request does pass. Thank you, Trevor. All right, next up on our agenda, we have the NIU evaluation scope of work, and who will be presenting for us today? Oh, Jennifer will. All right, so Jennifer, if you wouldn't mind presenting our update.
I'm going to stay at my spot because I'm running the computer too. So this is a request to amend the contract with Northern Illinois University for another year. So to add another year's time frame and to add $45,000. The contract with Northern Illinois University is to provide the evaluation required activity element for the council. So the council has specific things that you have to do by statute. And one of those, well, it's regulations. One of those is to conduct an evaluation of the Title I program. NIU is currently working on our evaluation for last year. It will be completed on June 30th this year and presented at the September meeting. but this contract is needed to start the evaluation for the next year. In the past, so before last year, the WWDC was out of compliance with USDOL. DWS does not have the capabilities in-house, and $45,000 is cheaper than a full-time staff member at DWS. So NIU has the experience necessary to conduct evaluations. They conduct evaluations for Colorado, Wyoming, and Illinois. So they're also right now being used as DOL's kind of gold standard when it comes to evaluations. They present at national conferences and are expanding their services to other states. USDOL does consider them our provider of evaluations, and knowing that they have granted us the status of being in compliance again. So the request again was brought to Strategic Performance and Finance at their last meeting. The request is for $45,000 and a 1-year contract extension.
Great. Thank you, Jennifer. Council discussion. Anyone online? Yes, Dar. Oh, turn on your microphone. Yeah.
It is green.
Oh,
Here, let's do this.
thank you, Mr. Wild.
I was just going to say, this really should be a no-brainer, $45,000, and we're back in compliance, which is huge in the federal world. So that's a heck of a deal. And if I could find a deal like that, I would take it in a heartbeat.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Aldrich. Any other council discussion before we welcome a motion to approve?
Mr. Chairman, I have a question. Since this could potentially be a recurring cost, is this something that should be more folded into the yearly budget versus an ongoing something that we need to approve year by year?
Great question. I don't know who would have the answer to that.
Mr. Chairman?
Yeah.
According to the bylaws, any expenditure that exceeds $45,000 especially through a contract, which we have to do for this, has to go through Strategic Performance and Finance and then brought to the full council. I agree with you. 45,000 or anything over 5,000 must go through Strategic Performance and Finance first and then the full council.
Thank you.
Is that, sorry, I don't mean to get off the tangent. Is that a dollar amount that should be evaluated? I know at the federal level, it just moved from 10,000 to 50,000 before you have to go through a lot more hoops.
That's a great question.
I was gonna say, that's definitely something we could. look
Yeah,
into.
it's, the council is going to have to work on reviewing and updating the bylaws over the summer anyway. So this is definitely something that should be added to the, or can be added to the discussion.
Yep, I would agree. All right. Well, I would welcome a motion to approve as presented.
So moved.
All right. Moved by Mr. Wild. Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, seconded by Director Gagan. Any additional council discussion before we move to voting? All right, hearing none. So all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, our extension with the NIU contract has been approved. All right. So next up on our agenda is going to be our committee breakouts. I don't know, Jennifer, do you have, for our online participants, do we have a solution to subcommittee breakouts? Okay. So this is definitely something I want to talk more about in the fall meeting, is how do we do this hybrid with our subcommittee breakouts? So does anyone have any recommendations? Otherwise, for those of us here in person in Evanston, let's have the community relations go there. And let's see, sector partnerships and next gen, like career pathways out there. And then as well, strategic performance and finance Stays in this room, yeah. And then let's reconvene. So you're gonna have 30, let's see, actually, we're actually ahead of time. That's great. So we've got 15 minutes. So let's just be back here at 11:30. And then we'll get updates from the chairs of the subcommittee. So 11:30, we'll reconvene and get some updates.
Travis?
Yes.
You can hold your strategic performance and finance committee meeting right here if you'd like.
Okay. Who all do we have present?
Oh, and Brenda is your new member to strategic performance
Welcome,
and
Brenda.
finance committee as of last week.
Welcome, Brenda. Yeah, so I'm kind of new to the chairman role. Robert Short, who was on the council, recently resigned, but I had been kind of, I guess, unofficially acting as his deputy, because his schedule was awfully hectic and not able to make many of the monthly meetings. So anyway, so we that was a big concern of mine at our last monthly meeting is, we were constantly having trouble getting a quorum together. We I guess we have with you, we now have 5 members on the committee, and it requires 3 to have a quorum. So other than Brenda, who else do we have on?
You have me here, Travis, Charlie
Oh,
Wilson.
Charlie? Okay.
And thank you for taking the position.
Yeah.
Sorry to hear that Robert's gone off.
Yeah. Jennifer, other than myself, Brenda, and Charlie, Michael's still on the committee as well.
Is that like we have Jennifer?
Okay. I'm kind of thinking it might be Michael and then Tina are the 5 of us. So, I suppose if we have any new council members, hopefully Jennifer will steer them our direction.
And Travis, are the meetings, if I remember right, Jennifer said the meetings are like the 3rd Wednesday of the month. Is that correct?
That is correct. Yeah. Usually at 1:30, I believe.
Okay.
Yeah. The 3rd Wednesday of every month at 1:30. So
Yeah, I just told her that I usually travel to Cheyenne on the 3rd Wednesday of the month, but what I'll do is I'll just make sure I get to Cheyenne early to participate.
So I don't know if there's, anything in particular to report to the council this quarter. Kind of our standing agenda is moving providers on and off the list, the ETPL. And then of course we review the monthly financials and ask questions on particular line items if one or another's higher, what's driving that. This last month, my concern was it didn't look like there was enough money available because our burn rate was pretty high at $400,000 or $500,000. But they assured us that that there was funding to get us over the finish line on June 30th.
Okay.
Then another standing agenda item is reviewing grants and then also any funding allocations or moving money around. Other than that, I still need to get a better grasp on what all our role is and how we can become more effective. I don't know, does anyone else have any other comments?
I don't think so. That sounds about right. I am familiar with the ET, the eligible training provider list, because as an apprenticeship, I also have to submit to be put on there. So and you make sure that we stay on that list. So yeah, that does sound familiar to me as well. And then it looks like when we make a recommendation for the moving of money and stuff, the council usually agrees with that most of the time. So
Yeah, that all sounds good. I'm apologetic for not being great at getting to the meetings on time. I'll try to do that. Wednesday is one of my busier days, but once a month I should be able to do. I've got it scheduled in.
Mr. Chairman, I just want to offer, if you have any questions, I'm here to support in any way that I can.
Thank you, Robin. Is there anything particular that you want me to communicate to the council?
I think we're doing really pretty well. I think the next steps for this committee will be to look at the spending targets for the next fiscal year. In general, I think we're on target. We, really see that staying probably relatively the same, but that might be something this committee wants to take a look at in the next meeting in planning ahead. We do, just for historical reference, the difference in federal grants versus a traditional budget is we've purposely called them spending targets because we do want you spending the funding because they do have a shelf life.
Right.
But that would be my recommendation to look at for next steps. But other than that, I think, this committee is doing a great job of vetting those requests and bringing those to the full committee.
Yeah. So, Robin, is the 5 members on our committee is myself, Brenda, Charlie, Michael, and Tina.
Mhm. I
Okay.
believe so. Yeah, I'm not aware that that's changed, but we've had a turnover internally in staff as well, and Jennifer's out on personal leave, so we're punting today.
Robin, another question is there, as I familiarize myself in the role and, is there, anything you feel like we can do to be more effective as a committee?
Really, I guess the question for me is how can we support the committee as a whole, whether that's coming from the fiscal team here at EWS or in partnership with this committee, how can we provide more education about the funding and what they're designed to do? I know that, we've offered in the past and would be happy to, do some high level overview with new committee members to talk about the funding and the purpose of those funds. I think from the DOL standpoint, they just want to make sure that, we're spending effectively. We have had question costs in the past, but we have stop gaps in place now with the new application processes and ensuring that, it meets those federal requirements before they go to the full committee for approval. Those are things that we think about internally. I guess for discussion, I would think about how can we collaborate together to provide more useful information maybe to the committee as a whole. You know, we worked with Chairman Lavera to develop the new format, but we're happy to adjust that in any way that the committee feels is beneficial for the group.
Yeah, I remember last month on the uh, on the council's budget, she was asking something about a breakdown of month and year on these current projects.
Okay.
I don't know if that's, you know, if she's wanting like a, you know, a future cash flow or takedown on them.
Okay.
If that makes sense. And I guess to me, that does make sense if, you know, if one of our goals is spending targets, knowing when those project funds are going to actually get taken down and spent.
For sure. Okay. Yeah, we're happy to take a look at that. Other than that, I'll add that we've received initial communication, so not the actual grant awards just yet, but it's looking like the next grant fiscal year is going to be very, very close to what we're seeing year over year. I think the overall impact to the council may be like $1,500 difference in the normal 15% set aside. So very, very close. So no major cuts there.
So Robin, you mentioned the possibility of sort of the overview, introductory kind of basic stuff for presenting. I'm totally interested in hearing more of that and repetitive as much as it is. I would welcome that.
Okay.
I remember is that possible something we could work in maybe one topic on a meeting?
Absolutely. We're happy to do whatever it is that you all want. We can do it virtually anytime, or we can come to the next meeting and carve out time, whatever you all feel is appropriate. We're happy to do.
Yeah. Hey, Travis, would that be a useful thing to do in the meetings?
Say that again, Charlie. I was reading an email from Michael Kircher and typing back to him.
No problem. Yeah, I mean, from my perspective, more education, sort of ongoing conversation about the specifics and kind of big picture of the finances. I'm imagining they break into sort of categories or grants, and maybe inviting Robin to at each meeting present one or an overview. I'm not sure.
Right. Yeah, I think that's a great idea. Because we're not all, you know, financially you know, we come from different industries and you know, so we're not in the weeds with the numbers, you know, like we should be. And so I do think, you know, education on the different revenue buckets that come in and expenses that come in would be good for the committee as a whole.
Yeah, I'm happy to. The lens behind federal grants is very different from traditional accounting.
Yeah, so kind of like a crash course 101
Yeah,
on federal grants and,
sure.
you know,
Happy to do so.
That'd be great.
So shall I get with our team to prepare something for the next strategic planning?
absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. And if you want me involved in that conversation, just let me know.
Okay, yeah, that sounds great. I'll get with Jennifer Cassidy when she gets back next week and we'll put some thoughts together, Travis, and run them by you.
Thank you.
Mhm.
So are we gonna pull back together at 11:35, or is Chairman Trowbridge gonna call the group back together sooner than that?
I'm not sure. I assume so, but
Yeah. Well, hopefully the different chairmen aren't winded. I have a meeting at noon that I have to make, so. I will be expeditious in my report.
you should jump in and try to go first.
Right, yeah. Sadly, he has me on the agenda as last.
Right. If we're good, I might step aside for a few minutes and
You bet. We're good.
Fast. Great. Thanks again, Travis.
All right, so we're going to be reconvening here. So again, please take your seats and we'll get some updates from our subcommittee breakouts. And if you haven't decided so already, definitely designate someone to speak on behalf of your subcommittee.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes,
it's
Charlie.
Charlie Wilson here. We were sort of alerted that Travis is gonna have to, he's got a tight schedule. We were wondering if we could maybe bump our way up in line a bit.
Yes, actually, we can definitely move strategic performance and finance to the front. Absolutely.
Appreciate it.
Okay, so I'm going to call the meeting back in order. Hello, everyone. Yes, make your way back to your seats, please. We got the last little bit to wrap up on. We are back. Yeah. Oh, yes. Okay, so let's go ahead and kick it off. So hopefully, again, it's one of the great things also about being in person is being able to chat with each other, talk about our priority issues. So we're going to go ahead and get an update from Mr. Lawrence from the Strategic Performance and Finance Subcommittee.
Thank you, Chairman. I guess I'll open it up as a plea. If any council people are interested in joining our committee, we have room for you. We have a 5-member committee, and it takes 3 to have a quorum. Brenda, Charlie, myself, Michael, and Tina. And I'm new to the chairman role. Councilman Robert Short, has had other work commitments, but kind of unofficially, I guess I've been filling in for him on the monthly meetings and feel comfortable in the role. Kind of what our committee does, we have pretty much a standing agenda every month, reviewing the eligible trainer provider list and recommending companies and programs to come on and off. I would say pretty much everything that we do eventually makes its way to all of you guys at the quarterly meeting. Another thing we do monthly is review both the council and department budgets, ask questions on line items if anything looks out of sorts, kind of tracking the burn rates on the department budget monthly to make sure where they're going to be at the end of the year, review any grant applications, and of course, push those forward to you. And then also any reallocation requests. Being new to this role, just in our breakout session, we talked about ideas on and goals for our committee on how we can be more effective, what kind of information we can present to all of you that might make more sense. Maybe projected cash flows might make sense to see, when the spending takedown is going to happen, because we do have spending targets and we want to make sure that we exhaust, the money that we get. And then also maybe for our committee having a kind of a education session on the finances and 101 on federal grants. So that's kind of the direction that we're going to be heading. Instead of just handling the normal course of business monthly, kind of want to weave in some education and become a stronger committee as a whole, so we can disseminate the information to you and be more effective. So that's my report.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Lawrence. And just like on a side, as council business, just let this group know that, Robert Short did resign from the council, and Chairman Librera has also appointed Mr. Lawrence to be the chair of the Strategic Performance and Finance Committee. So thank you, Mr. Lawrence, for taking that role and leading that team. And, to your point as well, all of us should be on some subcommittees. So if you don't know what subcommittee you want to be on, what you're assigned to, please reach out to myself or Jennifer so we can do that. But thanks again for the update and welcome to your new role, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, I'm happy to be in it. Thank you.
Great. All right. Let's see. Moving on to our next update from our subcommittees. I'm going to ask Larry to speak on behalf of the sector partnerships and career pathways.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Next Gen Academy happened at the end of April. Everything went well. I think it was well attended, 80-ish folks in attendance for that. I think it was engaging. Everybody was involved. It was exciting to see some new partnerships there. The Laramie County Healthcare Partnership was in attendance. They've started having their regular meetings. So it'll be exciting to see what comes out of that. For Laramie County, we've got the construction partnership still going strong. Partnered a few times with the school district here recently, did some signing days at the high schools and gave those kids going into the trades some significant opportunities with their parents and their administrators to appreciate what they're doing. We've got a partnership potentially forming after we continue developing the young contractors group in Laramie for Albany County for construction as well. So hope to involve Climb and get some other folks involved in that program over there. We've got some university students starting to get involved in that. Some companies that haven't previously been involved are attending all the meetings. So Next Gen hopefully is down the road. We've gotten involved in Rollins at the school with a few opportunities that we didn't have before. So that's been exciting. At the Next Gen Academy, I was approached by a gentleman here from Evanston who's potentially a industry champion that might be able to head up some stuff here in Evanston to start a construction partnership here as well. Hearing all the information we heard earlier today, I think that'll be kind of crucial with the workforce struggles they're going to have with, 5,000 or so construction workers needed in this area. So, Ron, anything to add from Southwest Manufacturing Partnership?
Well, there's all kinds of things I'll add, but the only thing that I will add is Larry sent us information and we're going to put the young contractors into our upcoming newsletter. So those of you who don't get the newsletter, if you'd raise your hand. Yeah, I don't expect anyone here would, but it is swmpartnership.org. Go to the website, click join. It's really simple. Next month, we've got Tom Horn talking to all of the business leaders. And if you don't know who Tom Horn is, well, it's Wyoming history. So happy to continue to support your organization as well, Larry.
Well, thank you, Ron. And up in Casper, we have a young contractors group developing as well. They're about 10 members strong or so at this point, but the hope is to build that group so that maybe that next gen effort can fire back up in Casper as well for the construction industry. So.
Very cool. Thank you, Larry. And yeah, I had the opportunity to visit the Next Gen Academy in Cheyenne and very well attended. Really great conversations. I don't know, Jennifer, how many people was it, like 50-ish or so folks, the Next Gen Academy that we had? Over 80, yeah, in person or remote. Like that's really cool. So I'm liking what we're seeing on that side. So good stuff. All right. And then our last subcommittee update. Do we have anyone representing communications and community relations?
Philip lost rock, paper, scissors.
Okay. Okay. So Philip is saying nothing to report on the communications and community relations. Your microphone. Yep. Well, and just kind of as a personal side, I think this is definitely one part of the agenda I would like to relook at as far as how do we involve our, online folks or in person. Like this is the trickiest part. So I think, starting in September, we could probably come up with a really good idea. So I'm always open to suggestions, but it's really important that the subcommittees meet, they have a quorum, they're able to approve their minutes and agendas, then able to present to the entire council on their updates. So look for changes this fall, I think, too. Great. All right. Well, that will then wrap up our agenda item for subcommittee updates. And so we're going to move on to our next section, which is time for public comment. So do we have anyone currently or any other council business or announcements or updates that we would like to speak to? Yes, Brenda?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I would just like to thank DWS and the Apprenticeship Grant Office. We received a grant of $5,000 to incorporate a virtual reality lab on our campus. So we will bring that online in the fall. So thank you again for that.
That's great. Awesome. Yeah, other updates or public comment? All right, hearing none, then we'll go ahead and close out the public comment section here. And I guess, because we kind of wrap up, I don't know, Director Gagan, do you have any parting words for the council before we reconvene? We'll be reconvening September in the Wind River Reservation. Lander, I believe, is our next stop. Is that correct? All right, yeah. Director Gagan.
I've enjoyed meeting those of you who I haven't met before. And certainly if you have any questions or need any information, please reach out and I'm happy to help you. Safe travels.
Great. Thank you, Director. And yeah, I think just to kind of close us all out, loved this meeting. Lots of great conversations. Really excited about where this council is going. If I kind of like recap some of my notes here, we had great conversations around quantum computing. Artificial intelligence obviously is not going anywhere anytime soon. So again, keep that in your brains. How are we going to interact with it? How are we going to implement it? What does it mean for us? So looking at the YO relocate is great as well. Keeping our youth here. We saw that in the Harvard Growth Lab this morning on just the numbers and like, how are we going to solve those problems? And then with council updates, we've got a few open positions. So again, reach out to myself or Jennifer, like definitely recruit, think about industries in different parts of the state where we can find really great people to add to this brain power that is this council. So we've got some openings there. And we also talked about, again, brainstorming ideas around having a rapid response, not just to businesses closing, but when we have this growth spurt, how do we address that? And like, how does Wyoming stand up for those? I would probably say that how I'll leave you is it's so important that we realize that Wyoming, we're the 10th largest geographical state, but we're the smallest. So when Evanston wins, Wyoming wins. When Casper wins, Wyoming wins. We're not big enough to eat each other or compete with each other. Like, this is truly a collaborative effort to help the entire state of Wyoming. And so, that hashtag teams win. It's going to take all of us putting our heads together. And as I mentioned earlier, there's someone on this council, if you don't know the answer to something, someone here does, or they know someone that does. So utilize the resources, engage over the summer, and have those conversations, and just really also think about in the future. There's an acronym that I love and I always turn to. It's called PDP. So when we're having meetings, we're having conversations, always think about PDP, and PDP stands for purpose. You've got to have, why are we meeting? Why are we talking about this? What is the purpose, right? You've got to, as a leadership team, we've got to set that purpose. D is the direction. How are we going to get there? Cool. We just aligned our purpose. How do we get there in the direction? And then lastly is progress, right? So you've got to continuously update where are we at. This is our purpose, direction, and progress. And so that's kind of what I was speaking about with our strategic plan. That's what I would like to see is, what's our purpose? Why are we doing it? How are we going to measure it? What's the direction? And then how are we going to report that back to not only ourselves, but back to our constituents in the state of Wyoming? And so we're making progress. Coming to this thing is a privilege. All of us were appointed by the governor, and we should take that, not lightly. And I'm just thankful for all of you for being a part of this, and kind of what Director Gagan said, for those of you who joined us in person, safe travels. Want to definitely see you in September at the Wind River Reservation. And at this time, I would welcome a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All right. It's been moved by Ron Wild. Do I have a second? Oh, we don't need a second. Okay. Goodbye. Yes. Thanks again for joining us today, and we'll see you in September.